Chapter 628. You're back, why are you so late? Seeing Zhang Hai walk in, Bernice, who was leaning on the sofa and eating blue plums, asked with some confusion. As she spoke, she stuffed a few more blue plums into her mouth. Her fingertips and mouth were bluish-purple, as if she was poisoned, but Zhang Hai didn't have the time to make fun of her today. Oh, I drank a little too much at noon, so I rested at his place. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai smiled, walked to the sofa, then sat down directly, looked up at the light, and then slowly looked back at his big fish tank. What's wrong? Haven't you recovered yet? Looking at Zhang Hai, Bernice couldn't help but ask Zhang Hai with some confusion. No, I've recovered, but there are some. Well, I don't quite understand. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai immediately raised his head and said with a chuckle. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai was still a little flustered. He went to watch the game today, then went to Xueqi's place, and what he did, there was no need to say. With Kelly joining the battle later, Zhang Hai and the others stayed in the bathroom upstairs for an entire afternoon. Fortunately, Xueqi's house has a total of 4 bathrooms, one upstairs, one downstairs, one in the warehouse, and one in the reception room. Otherwise, they would be suffocated. By the time Zhang Hai helped Kelly and Delia out, it was already past 6 o'clock in the evening. Most people had already left, and the owner, Xueqi, also drank too much and collapsed on the sofa. Zhang Hai didn't say much and helped the two leave. Of course, he only came back after sending them back to their respective homes. But even though he came back, Zhang Hai was still a little confused about what Kelly and Delia said this afternoon. What do you not understand? Tell me. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice turned around and looked at Zhang Hai with some confusion. Looking at her, Zhang Hai also turned his head and looked at Bernice. He thought about it in his mind. Maybe if he talked to Bernice, she might give him an answer. It's like this, I've been trying to integrate with the people in the town recently, but I found out today that I'm really different from the people in the town. I can tolerate other things, but the problem is that I can't accept fighting. It's like the Americans are very relaxed about fighting. They don't have much sense of moral betrayal, which makes me a little puzzled. Looking at Bernice, Zhang Hai thought for a moment. He didn't tell the complete truth, but she should be able to understand if he said it this way. After hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice's face suddenly turned red. She was still a young girl. She was still a little uncomfortable when Zhang Hai asked her such things, but she was asking for it. If she didn't answer, it didn't seem too good. So after a little hesitation, she explained to Zhang Hai. Let's talk about education in America. Let's talk about the education in China and the United States. In the United States there are 2 types of education. One is similar to the education you see today, a pure American education. They will teach the children about combat when they are very young to prevent any problems. But it is also because of this that the children in the United States are very curious about this aspect. When their physical conditions allow it, they may try it. Bernice thought for a moment and said hesitantly. As she said, education in this area was indeed very early in the United States, but it also developed into 2 extremes. One kind was the Catholic family. They were very strict about fighting because in their view, if one's body was impure or had an abortion, they would die without a burial place. Therefore, generally speaking, the Catholic family was very strict about this aspect. But most ordinary American families were very casual about the management in this area. They didn't care about their children knowing the other half when they were 13 or 14 years old. Of course, they had to be prepared for it. Although Catholicism was the world's largest religion, there were definitely not many people who didn't believe in it. This created the mainstream impression in the United States. Xueqi had always been very conservative in this area. They began to set up education in this area after high school, so the current environment in the country was very chaotic. But in fact, after graduating from high school, most of the boys and girls in the country had not fought before. At least 70% of them had not fought before. But in the United States, more than 80% of them had fought before. This was also one of the reasons why the media in the 2 countries criticized each other. The domestic media would say that the combat education in the West was earlier and more advanced. It could let the children know more, and this was beneficial for the children's development. On the other hand, the Western media would criticize their own government for introducing combat education too early. This would make the children develop a bad interest and curiosity in these things, and thus they would try it out. This was not beneficial to the children's development. Of course, both sides had their reasons. This was only the media's criticism. After all, foreign things could not be forced on a country. For example, if the same thing was used on Huaxia in the United States, Huaxia would probably be in chaos. Because people had too much power, they would become arrogant. Huaxia had never lacked ambitious people since ancient times, and it was hard to say whether they would use proper means to obtain the power they wanted. So, Huaxia would be in chaos. And if the same thing was used on the United States in the Huaxia, the United States would also be in chaos. The Americans were used to freedom. If you suddenly asked them to pay for their own medical care, pension insurance, and social welfare, and if they lost their jobs, they would have to find a job themselves. Every day, they would have to work hard for a few square meters of house. They would definitely rebel. Therefore, different national conditions meant different natural environments. However, Zhang Hai was now a Huaxia citizen in the United States. Since he had to find a way to integrate into this country, it would be very troublesome. Otherwise, he would have to abandon the habits he had developed in the country all these years and integrate into the country like an American. But he was not willing to do so. He had some things on him that he would not throw away no matter what. But this collision of Eastern and Western cultures really made him feel a little overwhelmed. In the United States, this Western world, before a man and a woman were married, the restrictions on each other were not very strict. Things like delias were very common. After all, they did not get along with each other for the purpose of marriage. But in China, since a man and a woman had confirmed their relationship, if one of them cheated, it would be a big mistake. Who would play it down like this? Unless it was those white-collar workers who pursued a one-night stand or something like that. Otherwise, why would someone act like this? Zhang Hai was not a white-collar worker. He would not pursue a one-night stand or anything like that. He did not lack women. This kind of cultural shock really made him feel a little overwhelmed. That was why he asked Bernice. But after a long time, Bernice still could not explain it clearly. Because she did not really understand these things. Hey, after a long time, you still don't understand. In short, if you feel that there is a way to integrate into this group and you are willing to do it, then you can give it a try. For example, go to a party or watch their football game. These are also things that I want you to do. But if you have some doubts about some things, then you don't have to follow the American attitude. For example, this thing, understand? Seeing that Zhang Hai had listened to her for a long time and still had some confusion in his eyes, Bernice pursed her lips. In fact, she had already started scolding him in her heart. This Zhang Hai was really annoying. Did he not know that she was a big girl? How shy would she be if he asked her that? Although she was used to learning Chinese and Western culture, she was still a traditional Huaxia girl in her bones. After saying so much, she felt that she had already broken through her limits. But if she did not explain it clearly, she was afraid that Zhang Hai would mess around. So after saying that last sentence, Bernice stood up. She did not care about the pot of blue plum beside her and directly ran back to her room. She needed to digest it properly. If I'm willing to try, I can try. If I'm not willing to try, can I not try? This seems to work. Zhang Hai took out a few blue plums from the big bowl and threw them into his mouth. As he ate, he muttered softly. He felt that he wasn't himself this afternoon. This wasn't good news. Unknowingly, this was what Zhang Hai was thinking. He sat on the sofa and ate the blue plums while unconsciously watching the TV in front of him. Aphrodite and the others did not come over tonight. There was no one else in Zhang Hai's room, so he had a lot of time to think about some things. After an unknown amount of time, when the last blue plum was thrown into Zhang Hai's mouth, he could not help but shudder. After that, Zhang Hai felt a little strange. With his physical fitness, why would he shudder? Thinking of this, Zhang Hai could not help but look into the distance. In the end, he happened to see the living room's window flapping in the wind. Looking through the window, Zhang Hai's eyes could not help but brighten. He only saw that the large expanse of snowflakes had fallen from the sky at some point. The entire world had unknowingly changed into a white coat. Putting the bowl aside, Zhang Hai stood up and walked to the window. He glanced at the snow on the windowsill. It was almost 2 or 3 centimeters thick. Looking out again, it was pitch black. Not to mention stars, there was not even a moon tonight. Oh, it's snowing. And it looks like it won't be small. Looking at the pitch-black sky outside, Zhang Hai's face showed a smile for the first time since he returned home. He was still very familiar with such a scene, because his hometown would also have such heavy snow at this time, but now his home was in Winthrop. Chapter 629. Boston was not very good at this point. It got cold too quickly. In fact, Boston's latitude was about 41 degrees, which was the same as the latitude of the imperial capital in China. But when it started to get cold here, it was almost the same as Zhang Hai's hometown, Bingqing. In many countries, the first snow actually had a lot of meaning, but for Zhang Hai, snow was just snow. It had no meaning. After seeing the snow last night, Zhang Hai closed all the windows and turned on the geothermal. But even so, he didn't sleep very well this night. After all, the windows had been open for a long time. When they were suddenly closed, he really felt a little suffocated. It was rare for Zhang Hai to wake up at 6 o'clock again. But at 6 o'clock in Boston, the sky had just begun to brighten. He opened the bedroom window to let some air in. As soon as the window was opened, the cold wind rushed in instantly. It was so cold that Zhang Hai couldn't help but shiver. The weapon under his crotch couldn't help but twitch. Hiss, it's really strong, but it seems that winter is here. Looking at the white expanse outside the snow, Zhang Hai couldn't help but whisper. Although he was a northerner, he obviously liked summer more than winter. Shrinking his neck, Zhang Hai went to the bathroom to wash up, then changed his clothes and went downstairs. He found that little Huang and Xiao Bai were a little lazy today, but Zhang Hai didn't care about them and opened the door directly. When the door opened, the cold wind poured into Zhang Hai's villa in an instant. At this time, little Huang, Xiao Bai and Xueqi, who were sleeping on the warm floor, reacted almost instantly. They looked at Zhang Hai with resentment. This guy is too annoying. After getting used to it, Zhang Hai simply stretched, exhaled a breath of white air, and prepared to go to the warehouse at the cowshed. Recently, he had to go to the warehouse every morning to help bale grass. Although he was the boss, he couldn't just do nothing, right? But before he left, he saw Robbins Garcia and the others coming out of the warehouse with some things. Hi, Robbins Garcia, aren't you bale grass today? Seeing them come over, Zhang Hai couldn't help but ask with some doubts. Boss, where are we going to get grass? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia glanced around, then said helplessly. Hearing what he said, Zhang Hai was also dumbfounded for a moment, then laughed self-deprecatingly. Yes, it's snowing everywhere. Where are we going to find grass? Thinking of this, he felt a little awkward in the air. By the way, boss, let's help you clear the ground here first. Maybe he felt Zhang Hai's awkwardness. As a qualified lackey, Robbins Garcia immediately changed the topic and said with a serious face. The snow is not very thick. There's no need to clear it. He raised his feet and looked. Although the snow last night was not light, it was not particularly heavy. After all, it was just the first snow. Although Zhang Hai did not eat fried chicken or drink beer, the snow was indeed not heavy. Now it looks like it's only 3 or 4 centimeters thick, which is far worse than last winter. It's because the snow is thin that we need to deal with it immediately because the weather is not that cold. Today's weather forecast said that it will be 13 degrees. The snow will turn into water at noon, and then it will freeze again at night before it dries. Robbins Garcia said to Zhang Hai when he heard Zhang Hai's words. Hearing what he said, Zhang Hai also nodded. Indeed, after the snow turns into water, it will be troublesome when it freezes again. Zhang Hai also doesn't want his house to be so slippery, so he immediately agreed and picked up a broom to help. When it first snowed last year, it was already the end of November, and the first snow at that time was quite heavy. A broom was not very useful in that kind of snow, but now there is only a few centimeters of thin snow, so a broom is the best thing. On the contrary, shovels and the like are not very effective. The grassland does not care whether there is snow or not, so Zhang Hai only needs to clear the road and the parking lot in front of the house. Today, Edward Anderson and the others are not in a hurry to go to the dock. They all came to help. It is said that there is strength in numbers, and this is really true. Zhang Hai and the others started sweeping at 6 o'clock, and they were all done by about 8 o'clock. Zhang Hai also deliberately drove the helicopter around the manor with Marlon Rupert. After making sure that there is no road left unswept, he returned home. When he returned home, Bernice, Xiaoya, Daliana, Marian, and Azalina were already up. Xiaoya had also prepared breakfast. Everyone gathered around the table and started eating. When did it snow last night? It actually snowed so heavily. While eating Xiaoya's wontons, Bernice asked with some doubts. She didn't notice that it was snowing outside when she went to bed last night. You just left not long ago. I don't remember. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai recalled for a moment. He also forgot when Bernice left. He only remembered that after seeing the snow, he went upstairs to sleep. It's snowing today. Do you have any activities? Looking at Zhang Hai, Bernice asked with a smile. I don't think so, just stay at home. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai curled his lips. He had to admit that during the summer, Zhang Hai wasn't too idle. He still had some things to do. But when it came to winter, he really didn't have anything to do. Last winter, he played basketball and fished for the whole winter. But last year he was alone, so it didn't matter. This year, there were so many people around him, so he couldn't play basketball and fish. Moreover, after that addiction passed, he didn't like these two hobbies so much. If you ask him now what he is going to do in winter, he is a little confused because he doesn't know what he is going to do. If you have nothing to do today, let's go make tonghulu. Seeing that Zhang Hai had nothing to do, Bernice thought for a moment and suddenly said to Zhang Hai. Hearing her proposal, Zhang Hai was stunned for a moment, then touched his chin. This is also okay. After thinking about it, Zhang Hai felt that making tonghulu was not bad. Tonghulu is a traditional snack of Huaxia. It is available all over the country. He believes that people in Huaxia are not unfamiliar with this snack. The method is also very simple. Use a bamboo stick to skewer the fruit you want to eat. The most common one is mountain dregs. Of course, there are many different kinds now, such as grapes, kiwi, peaches, apples, oranges, grass, and so on. There are all kinds of fruits. Then use the boiled sugar to cook it, and then cool it down. It is very delicious. However, in terms of cooling, one thing was very important, and that was to freeze it. The taste of frozen candied haws was very different from that of unfrozen ones. But if you put these candied haws in the cold storage or the refrigerator, the effect wouldn't be very good. The best effect was to use the weather to freeze it. Then, the taste would be quite good. In fact, Bernice said that she wanted to eat this thing in the autumn. This was because Zhang Hai had a lot of fruit trees. Autumn was the time to harvest them. Looking at those fruits, she was a little greedy. But at that time, the weather wasn't cold enough, so Zhang Hai didn't do it. Now that the weather was cold, it was possible to do it. Great. Then let's eat together. Hearing that Zhang Hai agreed to make it, Bernice couldn't help but smile. Then she said to the girls next to her. Hearing Bernice's words, Xiaoya was very excited because she has eaten it before. But Delina and Marian looked at each other. They really haven't eaten this thing before. But seeing Bernice and Xiaoya's excited appearance, they were also very interested. Only Azalina shrugged her shoulders. She had eaten this thing before, but she didn't think that it was delicious. But since everyone wanted to make it, she was no exception. Since everyone agreed to do this, everyone's eating speed increased a lot. After eating, Zhang Hai and Bernice went to the warehouse where the fruits were stored to see what they were going to do with it. Zhang Hai liked to eat fruits, and because of the spiritual qi here, the fruits were growing quite well. Although he didn't intend to sell fruits, he planted a lot of them at home. Hawthorns, blue plums, kiwis, nectarines, cherries, and so on. He had everything. Looking at these fruits, Bernice's appetite was aroused. After looking around, Zhang Hai picked up a lot of things to eat. Then he carried them back to the villa. After bringing the fruits back, they began to prepare. Removing the seeds and peeling, these things didn't need Zhang Hai's help as Bernice already knew. But there was a problem. They didn't have any bamboo sticks or rock candy. This gave the girls a headache. I'll go to the town. But Zhang Hai didn't care. Then he decided to go to the town and see if he could buy it. He knew that he could buy bamboo sticks. This was because in the United States, some people like to eat barbecued meat with bamboo sticks. It was said that people from the Middle East and Huaxia spread the news. During the last barbecue party, Zhang Hai ate a lot of barbecued meat with bamboo sticks. So he could definitely buy bamboo sticks. But for rock candy, he would have to try his luck. Americans like to eat sugar, granulated sugar, soft sugar, caramel sugar, maple sugar. They liked to eat all kinds of sugar. But Zhang Hai wasn't sure if there was any rock sugar in the United States. So after talking to everyone, Zhang Hai drove to the town. When his car drove out of the manor, he saw a cleaning truck on the road of the town. After giving way to the snow removal truck, Zhang Hai drove into the town. But as soon as he entered, he found that the town was very busy. At this time, everyone was cleaning up the snow from yesterday. It seems that except for the time when the town was being renovated, there wasn't such a busy time. When they saw Zhang Hai again, they didn't know if it was because Zhang Hai had participated in the two parties and went to watch the town's football team play. This time, when Zhang Hai came to the town, at least the young people were more friendly to Zhang Hai. Some people began to take the initiative to greet Zhang Hai. This was a good start. After parking the car in the parking lot, Zhang Hai tightened his clothes and went to a supermarket on the business street. Supermarket was the abbreviation for supermarket, but in fact, this was not a supermarket. It was more like a convenience store. But even so, the daily sales here weren't low. Even if it was winter in Winthrop, there were still some people who came here to play. At least in this shop, there were more than a dozen people buying things. Many of them were Huaxia people. In addition to buying some daily necessities, many Huaxia people would also take some cigarettes here when they left. This was a habit of the Chinese people. Although Zhang Hai did not smoke, he had some understanding of the cigarettes in the United States. When it came to cigarettes in the United States, 9 out of 10 people would think of Marlboro. But in fact, Marlboro was a Swiss brand and had nothing to do with the United States. But the sales in the United States were the highest. In the United States, the most popular cigarette brand was Camel, followed by Winston, Good Fortune, and another brand called American Spirit. There was a picture of a smoking Native American on the outside of the cigarette box. It was said that this type of cigarette did not contain any essence and was made from pure tobacco leaves. It was very popular in the United States, but it was also very strong. Other than American Spirit, the best-selling cigarette was White Marlboro. At this time, the Huaxia tourists in the shop were all picking cigarettes. Each person could only bring 2 cigarettes back to China, so there were not many choices. This shop was Zhang Hai's shop. He rented it, so when Zhang Hai walked in, he was stopped by the shop manager. "Hi Zhang, you are here. What do you want to buy?" Seeing Zhang Hai walk in, the shop manager, a bearded man, said with a smile. His current life was closely related to Zhang Hai. Moreover, he also heard that Zhang Hai wanted to integrate into this place. Therefore, he would not be stingy to show his goodwill. "Oh, hello you are. Luo Lin." Seeing the bearded shop manager come over to greet him, Zhang Hai hesitated for a moment. After thinking for a long time, he did not call out this person's name. Indeed, he was not familiar with the people in Winthrop. "Luo Lin Canal. It's good that you remember my name. Haha, is there anything you want to buy?" Hearing that Zhang Hai still remembered that his name was Luo Lin, the big bearded man was very happy. He asked Zhang Hai with a happy face. Chapter 630. Let me ask, do you have any bamboo sticks and rock candy? Hearing Luo Lin's words, Zhang Hai also chuckled. He had to admit that sometimes these Americans were quite friendly. He glanced at the supermarket and said to Luo Lin, "Bamboo sticks? Wooden sticks, right? They're inside. As for rock candy, what kind? Food. Drink." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Luo Lin froze for a moment, then whispered to Zhang Hai. Looking at his mysterious appearance, Zhang Hai was also somewhat at a loss. There is a word in English for rock candy, but this word is not as beautiful as imagined. In China, rock candy was rock candy. Everyone would know what it was. But in the United States, rock candy was written in English as candy. It meant candy, or fancy clothing, or sweet words. There was also another explanation which was gu ku, and so on. So when he heard Zhang Hai say that he wanted this thing, Luo Lin also gestured with his hands. "Oh no, I don't touch these things. I want to eat rock candy. Whole, translucent candy. Put it in your mouth and eat it." Hearing his words, Zhang Hai immediately shook his head. "He will not touch these messy things." "Ha, you scared me. The candy is in the 3rd row. You can go look for it. I don't know if it's there or not." Seeing that Zhang Hai did not look for those things, Luo Lin also breathed a sigh of relief. Although in the United States, there are places where smoking marijuana is not illegal, but these drugs are illegal everywhere. Plus, these are not good things. He does not want Zhang Hai to be involved in these things. Smiling at him, Zhang Hai walked to the corner of the third row. As a result, he found that there were a lot of sweets and all kinds of sweets. Americans really like to eat sweets. They really like to eat sweets. Every year, the average adult in the country absorbs 22 spoons of sweets every day, which is more than 100 grams, which is about 2 ounces. That's an average of every day, not every month, not every year. Maybe Americans don't know what healthcare is, or maybe they really like to eat candy and have immunity. Otherwise, how can they not be afraid of diabetes? As for teenagers, well, they eat candy even more fiercely, 34 spoons a day. Almost all of their snacks are sweet, not to mention the national food pie, donuts, chocolate, and so on. These high-calorie, high-sugar foods are their favorite. This can be seen from the variety of candies here. Zhang Hai walked to the counter and squatted down to take a look. He found rock candy here, which saves a lot of trouble. He took 2 bags of rock candy and went to the side to get bamboo skewers. Oh no, wooden skewers. There is almost no bamboo in the United States, and they do not use bamboo. Among the 3 major types of bamboo in the world, Asian bamboo is the most widely used. American bamboo only grows in Latin America. Even if there is bamboo in the United States, it is very rare, and no one will cut it. But it does not matter if he uses wooden skewers. After getting the candy and wooden skewers, Zhang Hai was about to pay the bill. But when he passed by the counter, he saw a shelf selling drinks. So, Zhang Hai took a bottle of Coca-Cola 0 degrees. A long time ago, he liked drinking 0 degrees. When this drink was launched, it attracted a lot of attention. But later, it was unknown if it was because of the suppression of the industry, or if there was really a problem. But the aspartame used in 0 degrees was exposed as a cancer-causing substance. For a period of time, it was taken off the shelves all over the world. But later, for some reason, it reappeared. Zhang Hai did not know whether it was cancer-causing or not, but Zhang Hai knew that it did not have many calories, so it was fine to drink. Zhang Hai took the 3 items to the counter and was about to pay the bill. But at that moment, a man in Indian clothing walked in and stood behind Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai was familiar with this man. He was an Iroquois. When Zhang Hai and Mayor Wallace were discussing setting up a Native American store in the town, Mayor Wallace went to the mountains and met with the Iroquois. Then, he came forward to facilitate this matter. This Iroquois was the most business-minded among the Iroquois tribe in the mountains. When he heard about this, he persuaded the chief of his tribe to come out of the mountains and become the manager of this small store. Indeed, if an Indian store was not being sold by a Native American, it would more or less give people the impression that it was selling dog meat under false pretenses. It was because of this Iroquois that the store's business was quite good. According to Moses Adams' calculations, the Indian store's total revenue in the 3 months of August, September, and October alone was $700,000. After deducting the $200,000 spent on purchasing goods, the store made a net profit of $500,000. Zhang Hai got 40%, which was $200,000. The town got 20%, which was $100,000, and the Iroquois got 40%, which was $200,000. Of course, the most important thing was that these goods were all bought from the Iroquois. In other words, they had earned a total of $400,000. This Iroquois, who was always in the limelight, naturally made a lot of money. Originally, he had rented a house to live in, but recently, Zhang Hai heard that he was going to buy a house in town. "Hey Zhang, you're here to buy something too?" While Zhang Hai was sizing him up, the Iroquois, who had been looking up as if he was thinking about what to buy, also noticed Zhang Hai. He called out excitedly, but his accent was a little strange. "Yes, you're here to buy something too." Although his accent was a little strange, Zhang Hai still understood what he was saying. "I ran out of cigarettes, so I came to buy some." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the man could not help but smile and say. When this man came, Zhang Hai remembered that he was reluctant to buy cigarettes. Instead, he just rolled up the tobacco leaves he brought from the mountains to smoke. Although it was strong and natural, it was not very comfortable to smoke. His mouth was full of smoke. Now that he had money, he naturally wanted to buy something better. When Zhang Hai heard him, He smiled and chatted with him. After chatting for a while, it was Zhang Hai's turn. After paying for these things, Zhang Hai left the supermarket. He opened the can of Coke and took a sip. After a while, he took a big gulp. It was indeed much more comfortable. As he walked, Zhang Hai drank. As for the people on the road, they kept saying hello to Zhang Hai. For their kindness, Zhang Hai responded to them with a smile. Unknowingly, he also walked to the parking lot. After getting in the car, Zhang Hai drove back to the manor. When he came, there was still some snow on the road. Although the snowplow swept more snow to the roadside, there was still some snow in the middle of the road. At this time, when the sun came out, the snow became water. It was fine to walk now, but if it froze at night, it would be troublesome. Looking at the situation on the road, Zhang Hai felt that if there was nothing important, he should not go to the town these days. After driving all the way back to his manor, Zhang Hai got out of the car and took the things into the house. At this time, Daliana and the others had already finished preparing the fruits. Logically speaking, when skewering candied haws, such as hawthorn, the hawthorn should be cut from the middle, then the seeds inside should be removed, and then the hawthorn should be closed. Then, the hawthorn should be skewered with bamboo sticks. There was a problem with skewers, and that was, the butt of the hawthorn would not be delicious. Therefore, what Bernice and the others did was to use chopsticks to stab the hawthorn through its butt. This way, the seeds would be directly removed, and the butt would also fall. Although there would be less meat, it was not a big deal. As for the other things, it was much simpler. The grapes were peeled and seeded, the kiwis were peeled and cut into small pieces, the blue plum was peeled and seeded, and the grass was directly cut in half. When Zhang Hai came back, these things were almost done. Seeing that Zhang Hai came back with the wooden stick, the others also began to skewer the fruits. Unknowingly, they had already skewered dozens of skewers. There were not many hawthorn skewers left, so Zhang Hai began to boil the sugar. This was the most difficult part of making candied haws. The ratio of sugar to water was 2:1, and the mixture was poured into the pot and boiled for about 20 minutes. There must be granulated sugar and rock sugar in this sugar, and it must be boiled for 20 minutes. During the boiling, it must be stirred constantly, otherwise, it would be burnt. After 20 minutes, the sugar was boiling very fiercely, and small dense bubbles had appeared, and the color had become golden yellow. At this time, it was necessary to use chopsticks to pick it to see if it could be pulled out. When making candied sweet potatoes, this kind of sugar was also used. At this time, it was necessary to turn off the heat and speed up, because it would become caramel in a while, and then there would be no way to eat it. After putting the sugar together, they quickly took the candied haws and rolled them in the sugar. After all of them were mixed, they directly put them on the marble slab to cool. Because the marble slab itself was low in temperature, it could help the candied haws take shape, and it was very slippery. When it was fixed, these candied haws could be removed. After waiting for a long time, Bernice and the others finally saw the candied haws take shape. Bernice wanted to take a piece, but she was slapped on the back of her hand by Zhang Hai. Feeling Zhang Hai's action, Bernice couldn't help but bare her fangs and brandish her claws at Zhang Hai. Now is not the time to eat, it has to be frozen for a night. Looking at her appearance, Zhang Hai couldn't help but laugh and pat her head. Sometimes, Bernice was like a child, which really made people not know whether to laugh or cry. Tise. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice couldn't help but slap her mouth, and then stared at the candied haws without moving her eyes. Well, let's play something, otherwise, it's too boring to stay at home. Looking at the people in front of him, Zhang Hai clapped his hands and said to everyone. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, these girls' thoughts about the candied haws were really diverted. For a while, everyone in the room looked at each other, thinking, what should they play? Play poker, it's very simple. Glancing at Zhang Hai and others, Azalina spoke first. But there's no point in playing poker if you don't bet something. Hearing Azalina's words, Zhang Hai thought for a while and said, it's really boring to play poker without gambling. After all, the way poker is played is too simple. Then let's play aeroplane chess. Looking at each other, Delina couldn't help but say excitedly. But that thing can only be played by 4 people. But hearing her words, Bernice on the other side spoke up. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai and others fell into silence again, because they didn't know what to play. Otherwise, let's play 3 kingdoms. Just when everyone was a little helpless and didn't know what to play, Little Ya said next to them. Hearing Little Ya's words, Zhang Hai and others all looked at her. 3 kingdoms? Hearing Little Ya's words, Zhang Hai's mind couldn't help but flash a scene of him and his buddies playing the 3 kingdoms. But thinking about it, it has been a long time since he last played it. Well, 3 kingdoms, in the past, I could only stay in my room. It was boring to study recipes all the time. I couldn't watch TV or play with my mobile phone because there would be radiation, so I liked to play some board games and the like. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Little Ya said with a smile. Hearing what Little Ya said, Zhang Hai and others looked at each other. 3 kingdoms, what is it? As if seeing the eagerness in Zhang Hai and Little Ya's eyes, Delina and Marion couldn't help but ask strangely. They are pure Americans. They don't know what 3 kingdoms is, they don't even know about 3 kingdoms. Well, it's a very simple game. You will know after playing it. Hearing Delina and Marion's words, Zhang Hai also smiled, then signaled to Little Ya with his eyes. Little Ya immediately ran upstairs. Since Zhang Hai cured her disease, although Little Ya still looks very quiet, she is a lot more cheerful. In the past, because she couldn't get any sunlight, she was lacking calcium all year round. In addition, she had osteoporosis and a serious lack of all vitamins. It can be said that even if she wanted to run, she couldn't. Fortunately, because of Bernice's guidance all year round. So in her heart, she didn't have any inferiority complex or mental illness like autism. But now that Zhang Hai cured her, she is very cheerful. Now if she can run she will never walk. When eating and chatting with Zhang Hai and others, if she can sit under the sun, she will never sit in a shady place. Looking at her change, whether it is Zhang Hai or Bernice, in fact, they are happy in their hearts. Especially in Zhang Hai's view, the best thing he did was to cure her. Looking at Little Ya's slender and tall figure, her pure white and flawless body, cough. It seems to be a bit off track. Chapter 631. I'm not playing anymore. What the hell? I'm going back to sleep. Looking at his lord who had lost 5 points of blood, Zhang Hai threw the cards in his hand into the pile of cards in front of him. He was really unlucky tonight. Zhang Hai and the others started playing after they said they were going to play the 3 kingdoms tonight. However, Zhang Hai was absolutely unlucky tonight. He took Zhang Fei, but he didn't have a single killer card. He took Guan Yu, but he didn't have a single red card. He took Zhen Ji, but she had a red card. He took Huang Yueying, but he didn't have a brocade card. He took De Qiao, but she didn't have a diamond card. He took Sun Quan, but he didn't have a single flash card in his hand. Bernice, who was sitting next to him, used a yellow bell. Then, she equipped a repeating crossbow and -1 horse. Well, there was no need to play at all. Just like that, in 2 rounds, Zhang Hai was finished with 5 drops of HP. Zhang, you're playing too badly. Daliana, who was the loyal minister this time, looked at Zhang Hai helplessly. Because it was a 6-person game, there was a master, a concubine, a loyal minister, and a traitor. Unfortunately, she really couldn't win. It's because my cards are bad. You don't understand. Forget it. Go back to sleep. Zhang Hai said helplessly as he looked at the pile of cards in front of him. Why am I so unlucky today? Zhang Hai smacked his lips. He felt that he was a little too miserable. It was said that success in love and failure in gambling, and when one was especially unlucky, it actually represented success in some aspects. For example, at this time, Zhang Hai didn't know, in an apartment in Boston. Walter was looking at Faraday, Kirk in front of him with an ashen face. This damn guy, he took my money and didn't do anything for me. Although his face was even uglier at this time, it wasn't a reason for me to let him go. Mr. Walter, I really don't have a way. If there was a little way to mess with Zhang Hai and Winthrop, I would do it without hesitation, but I really don't have a way. Now, the whole state is waiting for him to pay the taxes next year. Under such circumstances, I can't touch him at all. Faraday. Kirk looked at the ashen Peter Walter in front of him and pleaded. He didn't know that Zhang Hai was so powerful. Mr. Kirk, I think you're mistaken about one thing. I'm not listening to your complaints. I just want results. Peter. Walter gently tapped the handle of the chair under his butt and said with a gloomy face. I really have no way. I can double your money back to you. If you want to sue me, then go ahead. But when the time comes, I will indeed be guilty of bribery, but you won't be able to escape responsibility. I heard that Mr. Walter is recently running for president of Celanese Company. If there is any bad news at this time, it will also be disadvantageous to Mr. Walter. Looking at Peter Walter in front of him, Faraday, Kirk really had no other way. He gritted his teeth. In this case, he could only go all out. Since he threatened him, then he would threaten him back. Let's see who is more afraid of who. Oh, you're threatening me. Well, with a person like you, I guess we won't have a chance to meet in the future. Return the money we gave you 10 times over. If there's a penny less, I'll let you know the consequences. It won't be as simple as going to prison. Hearing that Faraday still dared to threaten him, Peter Walter's eyes narrowed. He subconsciously wanted to kill this guy directly, but considering that this guy lived in the wealthy area of Boston, and that he was not here to create a case, he took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. 10 times. Hearing Peter Walter's words, Faraday, Kirk was in a dilemma. He had received a total of $10,000 from Faraday. 10 times was $2 million. He had only earned a total of $2 million over the years, and this was including the villa under his feet. If he had to pay back 10 times, then he would really be back to square one. But if he did not pay, he might really have to go to prison to reflect. And most importantly, Peter Walter did not give him a chance to refute. After he finished speaking, he had already stood up and left Faraday Kirk's house. Walking out of the wealthy area, he returned to the hotel he was staying in Boston. They had long left Winthrop because all the townspeople knew that it was because of these people that Augustine and the others embarked on the path of confrontation with Zhang Hai. They even punished Augustine, let alone the townspeople. Therefore, in addition to living in Zhang Hai's villa, they couldn't buy anything. From cigarettes and lighters to food and ingredients, they couldn't buy anything. The reason why Zhang Hai let them continue to live in his seaside villa was because he wanted to buy something. It was mainly because Azalina was monitoring them. But now, they had no choice but to move to Boston a few days ago. When Peter Walter returned to the hotel, he heard waves of angry shouts and curses coming from his room. At around 9 o'clock that night, a man with Peter Walter's group left the hotel. He went to the South District of Boston. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, he went from 1 person to 10 people. These people drove to the port of Boston. After renting a boat there, they went to Zhang Hai's manor by sea. Big brother, are we really going to cause trouble for Zhang Hai? At around 1 o'clock in the morning, they drove the boat to the outskirts of Zhang Hai's territory. One of the young men whispered to the middle-aged man beside him with some hesitation. What's wrong? Are you afraid? Hearing his words, the middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and said with some arrogance, I'm not afraid. Think about it. That's Zhang Hai. Even a guy like Billy fell in his hands. I heard that those people's entire families were killed. Hearing what the middle-aged man said, the young man said with some hesitation, There's no evidence to show that those people were done by Zhang Hai. It's very likely that Billy offended a lot of people in the past, so as soon as he fell, his family was killed by other gangs. Don't be suspicious. Hearing this, another young man said with a smile. It was obvious that he was not afraid at all. But, can we do it? I heard that the defense of Zhang Hai's house is quite terrifying. But what this person said didn't make the young man let down his guard. He said to the people around him with a hesitant expression, That's why we're taking the sea route this time. A frontal assault isn't our style. Hearing his words, the employer sitting at the front spoke. After that, he turned his head and looked at the people behind him. I'll reiterate the goal of tonight's battle. You can't kill or kidnap Zhang Hai, or people who have an important relationship with Zhang Hai. These 2 girls, one is called Daliana, and the other is called Marian. They are Zhang Hai's nominal daughters. Of course, I don't know if they are his mistresses, but their relationship should be closest to Zhang Hai. What we need to do is to kidnap the 3 of them, at least one of them, understand? Looking at the people in front of him, the employer said with a serious face. Hearing his words, everyone nodded. This was also the reason why they were willing to accept this order. It was just kidnapping, not killing. This was the best result. If they really killed the people on Zhang Hai's side, they would be in big trouble. Since you all understand, let's do it. The time was 3:20 in the morning. At this time, the boat was about half an hour away from Zhonghai's dock. They could even vaguely see the lights on the dock, but they didn't plan to go to the dock. Instead, they turned directly and touched the forest in the distance. But at this moment, their boat suddenly shook. The propeller that was still moving in the water stopped at this time. The entire boat stopped quietly in the middle of the sea. What's going on? Looking at the motionless boat, the employer in front said anxiously, I don't know. The propeller won't turn. These damn profiteers, they actually gave us defective products. Hearing the employer's words, the person closest to the propeller couldn't help but curse secretly. Hearing his words, many people followed suit. Fix it quickly, we don't have much time. Looking at the time, it was already past 3 o'clock in the morning. They didn't have much time left. They had no chance to sneak attack again at dawn, so they must take advantage of this opportunity. Hearing this man's words, the people behind immediately responded and then prepared to pull the propeller out of the water. He did succeed. He successfully pulled the propeller out of the water. But when he pulled it out, his pupils unconsciously dilated. This was because at this time, there was a huge tentacle wrapped around his propeller. What the hell is this? Looking at the huge tentacle, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva as he muttered in a low voice. Tut 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 tut. But before he could figure out what was going on, under the sea, many tentacles broke through the water in an instant and entered their sight. Under their eyes, these tentacles instantly entangled the boat, and then there was a violent shaking, almost throwing them out. Not good, it's a big squid. Hurry up and think of a way. Looking at the situation in front of them, most people were confused, but the leader of those people was not the employer, but the middle-aged man. He recognized what this terrifying thing was. But he knew that the squid with this kind of tentacle must not be small. He didn't understand at all. Didn't this thing live in the deep sea? How come Zhonghai also has one here? Hearing his shout, no one moved, because the shaking was too violent. Who the hell is it? Go to hell. After all, this boat is not a particularly sturdy thing. Soon, the boat will be shaken apart by this guy. At this time, the crisis of survival also overcame fear. One person instantly pulled out the gun on his leg, picked it up directly, and shot one of the tentacles. In an instant, blue blood gushed out. But this bullet is nothing to this squid. Even for this tentacle, it's just a drop in the ocean. And this tentacle seemed to have found the direction in an instant. It let go of the boat and instantly rushed to the person who shot it. Without giving him time to react, the tentacle wrapped around this guy's body in an instant. The barbs on the tentacle were like daggers, directly piercing through this guy's clothes, and blood instantly flowed all over the tentacle and the cabin. Clay! Seeing their comrade being stabbed, many people unfastened their seat belts, preparing to save their comrade. But unfortunately, the tentacle didn't give them a chance. It exerted force in an instant, pulling the chair the person was sitting on directly and dragging it into the sea together with it. After they heard a scream, there was no sound outside, only the boat was constantly shaking like a boat in a storm. It was about to fall apart. Seeing this, everyone looked at the middle-aged man and the employer. Abandon the boat. Gritting his teeth, the middle-aged man knew that although it was safe to stay on the boat, if the boat was broken, they would also be finished. After he and the employer looked at each other, he issued such an order. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, everyone stood up for the first time, unfastened their seat belts, took some things they needed, and jumped into the sea. As soon as they entered the water, everyone swam to the other side like crazy, but they did not notice that it was really safe to enter the water. If they had night vision at this time, if they could see the situation under the sea at this time, they probably wouldn't say so. As these people swam desperately to the shore, some huge figures gradually appeared under them. With a flash of a black figure, the next second, a black figure instantly rushed up from under the water. It didn't give these people any chance or hope at all. It directly went from the bottom to the top, and in an instant, it bit a person's waist and rushed out of the water with an impact. This is... Looking at the huge figure in front of them and their companion who was directly bitten in half in mid-air without even having time to scream, everyone was dumbfounded. They did not understand why this was happening. Chapter 632. Boom! With a loud bang, the giant beast fell into the sea again, but one of their companions was missing. Feeling the rain of blood around them, they were completely stunned. Their eyes were filled with despair. Swim quickly, swim quickly. If you don't want to become food, swim quickly. It was too dark and they couldn't see clearly what was rushing up, but it seemed to be a shark. The leader reacted the fastest and immediately called everyone to swim to the shore. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, these people reacted and immediately began to swim to the shore. However, they were still too slow. At this time, the other big fish also launched an attack. Although Big Fool's wife wasn't as big as Big Fool, she wasn't small either. She caught up with a person behind and instantly bit the person's flapping foot into her mouth. As this person kept screaming, everyone watched helplessly as he was dragged into the water by Big Fool's wife and never appeared again. This made these people even more terrified. It was said that human potential was unlimited. After 3 of their teammates died, the remaining 7 people might have never swum so fast in their lives. They swam desperately to the shore. However, the big fish weren't just Big Fool and Big Fool's wife. At this moment, a figure emerged from the sea. Although this figure was much smaller than the previous 2, it was equally deadly. It didn't give its target any chance at all. Its sharp beak instantly pressed against a person's back. Before this person was stabbed into the sea, he saw clearly what attacked him. It was a dolphin, but didn't they say that dolphins were humans' friends? Why would it attack him? In fact, he was thinking too much. Humans would hurt each other, let alone animals. If humans placed their hopes on the premise that animals wouldn't hurt them, it would be too sad. Swim quickly, swim quickly. Listening to the continuous screams in his ears, the leader had no other choice but to shout for them to swim quickly. The monsters under the sea were not something they could fight against. Other than swimming quickly, they were at a loss. Even if they had guns on them against these monsters, what use were guns in the sea? Moreover, it was still night. This was a good time for them to launch a sneak attack. It was also a good time for these guys to launch a sneak attack. However, even if they used all their strength, they still lost people one by one. When the leader swam to the shore, only the employer was left. The 8 men he brought had all been buried in this sea. As soon as he came ashore, he didn't have time to celebrate the rest of his life. The first thing he did was to grab the guy's collar. It was all because of this guy that the 8 young men died here. Don't say those useless things. I'll raise the original price by 5 times. Now, we have no chance to retreat. But before the leader could roar, the employer had already slapped his hand away. While gasping for breath, he said helplessly. He didn't know that Zhonghai's sea would raise these monsters. Isn't he raising fish in the sea? How could he raise fish? The fish he raised were not enough for these guys to eat, okay? You bastard. Hearing his words, although the leader really wanted to beat him up, he was right. Now was not the time for internal strife. They had no way out. He threw him to the ground hard. He stood up again and observed the situation in front of him. At this time, because they were escaping for their lives, the place where they landed was the closest land to them. This was already the border of Zhonghai's manor. The electrified iron wire was there. If they wanted to leave, they would have to go through the electric current. Otherwise, they would have to wade in the water. But now, they would not go into the water even if they were beaten to death. There were 2 ways to go to Zhonghai's place. One was to walk along the beach, but this would be discovered by the people on night watch at the dock. The sound just now was so loud that the people on the dock had probably noticed it. The gains did not make up for the losses. Then there was only one other way left, which was to go through the forest in front of them without being noticed. The 2 looked at each other. Without saying much, they had already made up their minds. After taking a break, they looked at the time. Unknowingly, it was already 3:40 in the evening. There was not much time left before dawn. They had to speed up. They sorted out their equipment. Food, water and so on. They had been abandoned on the ship just now. After all, the ship had been reduced to pieces and was pulled into the sea by the monster. At this time, they only had a pistol with 15 bullets in it and a tactical dagger. Although there were not many things, they had to try their luck. Holding the pistol, they walked into the forest together. When they were outside, there was still the moon and the stars in the sky. But when they walked into the forest, the moon and the stars disappeared. Because it snowed last night, the snow melted in the sun and froze at night, so the forest ground was not very good to walk on. It was very slippery. The pace of the two's advance was somewhat affected. While quietly sneaking into the forest, they were constantly looking around vigilantly. There were sea monsters in Zhonghai's waters. Who knows what kind of things are in this forest? In fact, they were right to be careful. Because just as they entered the forest, a pair of green eyes quietly opened. Then, a huge figure slowly walked out from the depths of the forest. The thick pads on its feet allowed it to step on the ground without making any sound. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. Finally, when the two of them reached the center of the forest, the three of them met. But unfortunately, the prey did not realize that it was being watched at this time. I say, the situation doesn't seem right. Why is it so quiet all of a sudden? Looking around, the employer couldn't help but stop for a moment and whisper to the leader beside him. After the leader heard his words, he also listened carefully. Damn, I was almost fooled by you. It's November now. Insects and other things have died long ago. The birds that should have left have all left. How can it not be quiet? But after listening for a long time, the leader who didn't hear anything couldn't help but curse at the employer and leave first. Hearing his words, the employer was also stunned for a moment. Yes, he seemed to be thinking too much. But just as he laughed self-deprecatingly and was about to say something, a sudden gust of wind blew. In the next second, he felt a huge force from behind, pushing him to the ground. Then, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, and he couldn't feel anything else. After hearing this voice, the leader standing in front of him couldn't help but subconsciously widen his eyes and turn his head around. But when he looked back again, he didn't see the humanoid shadow, but only the shadow of a huge beast. At this time, the beast was lying on the employer's body, constantly gnawing on something. As if feeling his gaze, the beast also raised its head. Its pair of emotionless eyes stared at the person in front of it. Seeing its gaze, the leader here was already scared out of his wits. He had already forgotten that he still had a gun in his hand. The first thing he did was to run towards the depths of the forest. The beast followed behind him at a leisurely pace. After running for an unknown amount of time, the man ran into a pool in the forest. At this time, the giant beast also blocked him here. Looking at the giant beast in front of him and the pool behind him, the man was somewhat stunned. It's over, I'm dead. This thought kept washing the middle-aged man's heart. He was about to collapse. But at this moment, he suddenly felt his hand tighten. He remembered that he still had a gun. Thinking of this, he directly picked up the gun and shot at the vague figure in front of him without saying a word. Bang! The gunshot startled the giant beast, but after all, it had night vision. When he raised the gun, it had already made a dodging action, so this shot only startled it and didn't hurt it. But with this thing it was a lot more afraid. Seeing that the giant beast no longer moved forward, the middle-aged man here didn't continue to shoot. At this time, he only had 14 bullets left. He had to use them sparingly. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would have to spend his next life in prison, so he had to find a way to escape from here. Go away, get out of the way, get out of the way. Looking at the giant beast's slightly fearful eyes, well, he could only see its eyes. The middle-aged man kept shouting. It seemed that the giant beast really understood his words. After hearing what he said, it really slowly retreated until it disappeared into the forest. Watching the giant beast retreat, the middle-aged man sat on the ground powerlessly. He didn't expect that tonight would be so terrifying. He thought of many possibilities. His people and Zhonghai's gunfight, his people's success, his people's failure, and even the police came to kill him. He thought of all these, but he didn't think that his people would fall into the hands of some animals. Whether it was animals in the sea or on land, it was too scary. This Zhonghai, he is a madman. He is a pure madman. How can a normal person raise these things? Sitting on the ground powerlessly, he kept cursing, as if cursing Zhonghai at this time would make his mood better. But he didn't notice that while he was angrily scolding Zhonghai, something that looked like a piece of dead wood slowly floated out of the water behind him. The crocodile also had night vision, and its pair of eyes were emitting a faint green light. It slowly floated behind the guy who kept cursing its owner. In an instant, the giant crocodile shot out of the water. When the middle-aged man in front heard the movement behind him, he reacted immediately. He wanted to look back, but unfortunately, he only saw a big bloody mouth. After the gun in his hand unconsciously fired a few bullets, the whole forest returned to a state of tranquility. The wind blew, carrying a fishy smell, but he didn't know if it was the smell of blood or the sea. "Boss, did you shoot last night?" 3 hours later, when Jiang Hai went for a run, he happened to pass by the dock, but he was stopped by Eleanor Xueqi, who was on duty last night. She looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts and asked, "Last night? I didn't?" Thinking back, he was the only one who slept at home last night. He didn't even fire the gun, let alone a real gun. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Xueqi strangely. "That's really strange. I heard some gunshots last night, but after turning on the sonar, I didn't find anything. It's really strange." Hearing that it wasn't Jiang Hai, Eleanor Xueqi couldn't help but be a little puzzled. "It shouldn't be like this. Hey, it could also be from outside. I didn't receive an alarm here." Waving his hand, since there was nothing, Jiang Hai didn't care. Almost everyone in the United States has a gun, and it's not impossible for some gunshots to be heard at night. In the past, Jiang Hai had also encountered some people who drank too much. They would drive while shooting at the sky. When he first came here, he was woken up by these people. In his mind, it might have been the same thing last night. "Is that so? Okay." Although there were still some doubts, nothing really happened. After hesitating for a moment, Eleanor Xueqi nodded to show that she understood because she had encountered what Jiang Hai said before. "By the way, how's the situation at the fish farm recently?" Looking at Eleanor Xueqi, who had accepted his explanation, Jiang Hai also smiled and asked him the question he was most concerned about. "This is a big question. Recently, the fish have grown very well, and the water temperature is higher than last year. It seems that we will have a bumper harvest next year." When it comes to fish, Eleanor Xueqi is much more excited. After all, these are his insurance. Jiang Hai is a magical person. Edward Anderson told them this before. After they saw the income of the cowboys, these fishermen were anxious, but at the same time, they were full of confidence in Jiang Hai. They believed that as long as they did well, their future income would not be much higher than that of the cowboys, just like the ordinary fishermen and cowboys, but at least they would not earn less than them. His heart itched at the thought of earning dozens or even millions of dollars a year. It seems that he has unknowingly entered the ranks of the high-income group. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but grin. With such a boss, what else could he ask for? Chapter 633. It's so boring. Sitting on the recliner that was moved into the house, Jiang Hai was playing with his phone and reading a novel. His eyes glanced at the sunny day outside, hesitating whether or not he should find something to do. Otherwise, it would be really boring. Winter in the north was like this. There was really nothing to do. If someone heard Jiang Hai say this, they would probably say, "Then you can go out and play in the snow, build a snowman, have a snowball fight, etc." If someone said this, Jiang Hai would probably spit out a mouthful of salt soda. Build a snowman and have a snowball fight? Was that something an adult should do? Wasn't it boring? Also, where did the snow come from? Where was the snow? It was only the beginning of November. This was only the beginning of winter. Sometimes, there would be some small snowflakes at night, but they were just small snowflakes without any feathers. They would melt by noon in the day. The beginning of winter could only be described with one word: cold. It was hard to get used to. In this kind of weather, even if Jiang Hai wanted to go out and play, he had nowhere to go. Recently, the young people in Winthrop were either going to school or staying at home. Who would be crazy enough to go out and suffer from the cold? Even if they wanted to go out and play, they would go to places like bars. But everyone knew that Jiang Hai did not go to bars. But now, he was really depressed. He was like an old man, lying on his jade recliner, looking at the sky and his phone from time to time. He had nothing to do. The time in the United States was the opposite of that in China, especially in the East. There was a 13-hour time difference. When Jiang Hai woke up in the morning, it was already dark. When he was the most idle around noon, Huaxia was the time when she slept the best. He was also embarrassed to call his friends to go to the bathroom at this time, so he really had nothing to do. Actually, did Jiang Hai really have nothing to do? Actually, that was not the case. For example, there was a lot of work in the cowshed, but he felt that it was smelly, so he did not want to go. There were also a lot of zhuji by the sea, so he could go out to sea. He felt that it was cold, so he did not want to go. Therefore, when he stayed at home, he really did not have much to do. Winter in the north was like this. When there was no work, it was indeed quite boring. It was unlike spring, summer, and autumn when he could go out to play, but there was nothing to play with now. Jiang, do you eat tonghulu? Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about what he should do, Xiaoya ran up from downstairs in a pair of slippers. She was holding 2 candied haws in her hands. These candied haws were made by Jiang Hai last time. These days, Jiang Hai would put these candied haws into the freezer during the day and take them out to freeze at night. Therefore, the taste was quite good. After receiving a bunch of candied haws from Xiaoya, Jiang Hai ate happily. Speaking of which, these candied haws had been stored for a long time. The candied haws were sold around March to June every year. Jiang Hai's candied haws were left behind at that time. Although they were frozen and did not spoil, the taste was somewhat different. Next year, no matter what, I have to set up the greenhouse. I am not used to eating stale food. While eating the candied haws, Jiang Hai thought to himself. However, while he was thinking, he glanced at Xiaoya who was beside him. Then Jiang Hai sighed helplessly. Although it was winter, the weather outside was below 10 degrees, which was only a few degrees. However, the temperature in Jiang Hai's manor was very high. The geothermal heat in Jiang Hai's manor kept the temperature at 26 degrees. It was not particularly hot, but it was definitely not cold. Because of this, the women in Jiang Hai's villa were dressed very freely. Delina and Marian liked to wear pajamas with 2 layers of tulle. Although they did not wear anything inside, at least they had clothes and pants. Moreover, Jiang Hai did not have any bad intentions towards them, so these did not matter. And the most important thing was that when Jiang Hai told them, they would listen. This was the most important point. However, Bernice, Xiaoya, and Azalina were a bit excessive. Among them, Bernice liked to walk back and forth in the house every day. She did not wear a vest inside. As soon as she bent down, Jiang Hai could clearly see everything that should not be seen. Her lower body was a pair of athletic tight 3/4 pants, which tightened her thighs and buttocks. Azalina was more direct. She directly wore a short-sleeved t-shirt that looked like Jiang Hai's. Jiang Hai was very strong. He was more than 190 centimeters tall and weighed more than 260 kilograms. Of course, all of his muscles were very dense. Even so, his arms were still thick and his chest was big. He had to buy a 2-meter XXXL t-shirt. Azalina wore his shirt. One side of the collar was on her neck, while the other side could even completely expose her shoulders. Sometimes, she would wear a pair of underpants. Sometimes, she would wear nothing. She just walked in the house in such a cool manner. However, if someone knocked on the door, she would instantly return to the room. If she did not expose her shoulders, her ferocious cleavage would be exposed. Jiang Hai did not want to see it. Among these people, Xiaoya was considered relatively normal. However, she might have been led astray by them recently. For example, today, Xiaoya only wore a lace tulle nightgown. Although it was called a nightgown, it did not even cover her thighs. She did not wear anything on her upper body. After giving Jiang Hai the candied haws, she directly sat on the wooden recliner opposite Jiang Hai with her legs bare. Her clothes fell down, revealing her upper body. Jiang Hai could clearly see the 2 round lumps and some small things on them that could not be described. Looking down, he could clearly see the underpants with Winnie the Pooh printed on it. Jiang Hai was a little uneasy. Especially those 2 long legs, which were white and tender, swaying back and forth in front of him. Those little toes, which looked like they were carved out of jade, were also mischievously moving to show off their owner. He was in a very good mood now. Cough, I say, why don't you wear more when you go back? Looking at Xiaoya's appearance, Jiang Hai could not help but feel a little depressed. No, I feel that this is just right. If it's cold, I'll rub in your arms for a while. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiaoya smiled and then said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai could not help but roll his eyes at her. Where did you learn all these from? Don't always learn those useless things from your sister. If you have time, you should study your dishes more. Looking at Xiaoya, Jiang Hai looked at her unhappily and said to her. Is there anything you want to eat recently? Tell me, I'll make it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiaoya could not help but raise her eyebrows, and then said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai's attention also shifted from her body to food. Indeed, for people like Zhang Hai, eating might be the only existence that could compete with women. He felt that the next time if he could not control himself, he would just think about eating. He did not know if it was reliable, but this was worth a try. Now that Xiaoya mentioned food, Zhang Hai also remembered. Right, I want to eat soup dumplings. Can you make them? Since Xiaoya's illness had been cured, Zhang Hai would occasionally get up in the morning to make some breakfast. Usually, lunch and dinner were taken care of by Xiaoya. Xiaoya was really talented in this area. In the past, she only knew how to make Chinese dishes. Now, because there was no pork or river fish, she made more Western dishes. She also combined a lot of Eastern and Western dishes, which made the taste even better. So usually, Zhang Hai did not have any requirements for food, but now that she mentioned it, he would just say it and see. Soup dumplings? Is it from Su province? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Xiaoya also asked a little strangely. I don't know. I only know that it seems to be from Bao Qingtian's side. After hesitating, Zhang Hai said to Xiaoya. In fact, soup dumplings were a very ancient food in Huaxia. It had a history of more than 1,000 years. Legend has it that the earliest time was during the Northern Song dynasty. It was not a particularly noble dish. It was already sold on the streets and in the market. At that time, it was called soup dumplings or soup dumplings. The most famous place of origin was the state where fireworks occurred in March. During the Northern Song dynasty, Wang Lu, one of the 72 shops in Dongjing, Bianliang, produced and sold cave plum blossom dumplings. It was this kind of dumpling that was known as the best in Dongjing. After the Northern Song dynasty, soup dumplings were passed down in Kaifeng. It was not until the 1920s that it spread out from the first dessert shop. This kind of dumpling could be found in many places. The most famous one was Kaifeng, followed by Jiangnan, Shihong, Nandu, and so on. These were the places where these buns were produced. So now, everyone knew that these buns were mostly produced in Jiangnan, not the place where they were produced. So now Xiaoya asked if it was the one in Su province. Zhang Hai thought for a while, and it seemed that there was not much difference. Anyway, it is just soup dumplings. After hesitating for a while, Zhang Hai said to Xiaoya. He was also not sure where this kind of dumpling came from. But he was sure that it was not from Bing City, even though there was a restaurant in Bing City that sold delicious food. Oh, I know. I will give it a try. I had always been doing red case, and had never done white case before. After hearing what Zhang Hai said, Xiaoya was also excited. She also wanted to give it a try. The red case and white case that Xiaoya mentioned was a term used by chefs. The red case was mainly used to stir-fry vegetables, and the white case was used to cook staple foods like desserts, rice, steamed buns, dumplings, etc. All staple foods were under the white case category. Other than that, there was also water case, which was to wash vegetables and do odd jobs. Nowadays, it was not called water case, but odd jobs. After deciding to do it, Xiaoya finished the candied hawthorn in her hand and quickly ran downstairs to study it. It was not easy to make soup dumplings. The top, the broth, and the hardness of the noodles were all very particular. After about an hour, Xiaoya asked Zhang Hai to go downstairs to try. After Zhang Hai went downstairs, he saw a basket of dumplings on the table in the living room. This basket of dumplings did not look as authentic as the dumplings that Zhang Hai had eaten before, but it looked good. At this moment, Bernice, Azalina, Daliana, Marian, and Xiaoya were sitting around the table, looking at the basket of dumplings in front of them. They wanted to try but did not dare to. When they saw Zhang Hai coming down, they all looked at him. Didn't you try it? Looking at the basket of dumplings, it looked really good, so Zhang Hai asked them. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the girls shook their heads and looked at Zhang Hai expectantly. What kind of filling? Looking at their appearance, Zhang Hai couldn't help retreating a bit. But the smell of these buns was really quite good. He couldn't help it. After hesitating for a moment, he picked up one and asked Xiaoya. Fresh meat and shrimp. Seeing that Zhang Hai was about to try, Xiaoya could not help but say to him carefully. This was a very normal ingredient. Zhang Hai looked at the dumpling in front of him and hesitated for a moment, then gently bit into it and drank the soup inside. When the soup entered his mouth, besides being hot, Zhang Hai's eyes could not help but brighten. He had to admit that the soup was very good. Xueqi should have made the ingredients for the chicken soup, mixed with the fragrance of the meat and the sweetness of the shrimp. At least for this soup, Zhang Hai had to give it 10 points. In fact, it was also understandable. Not to mention the chicken soup, Zhang Hai's pork was the meat of the fragrant pig that he imported from the country. The shrimp were also Arctic sweet shrimp. All of them were fresh. Moreover, they grew up eating spirit chi plants, so it would be strange if the soup was not fresh. After drinking the soup, Zhang Hai threw the dumpling into his mouth. When he bit into it, he could feel the firmness of the meat, the taste of the chicken soup, and the texture of 2 shrimp stacked together. Zhang Hai's eyes suddenly narrowed. This taste was too good. Did you succeed? Xueqi looked at Zhang Hai's appearance and couldn't help but ask worriedly. Success! When Zhang Hai heard Xueqi's words, he directly picked up the steamer and ran upstairs. After hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice, Daliana, and Ma An also ran up. They had not eaten yet. Seeing Zhang Hai throw the dumplings into his mouth one by one, it would be strange if they were not anxious. Let them snatch it. I remember that you still have a lot of dumplings. Let's cook them. Looking at the 4 people fighting over the dumplings, Azalina walked to Xueqi's side and looked at Xueqi, who also wanted to try. She patted her shoulder and whispered. Hearing her words, Xueqi smiled and nodded. She almost forgot that she still had dumplings, so the 2 slipped into the kitchen and started cooking again. At this time, a sports car also arrived in front of Zhang Hai's manor. Chapter 634. When the sports car stopped, a woman with a seductive figure got out of the car. This woman looked to be in her 20s. She was tall and had long hair. Her skin was very white, and she had sharp legs. Her eyes were slender and not small. She looked like a little fox, making people want to hold her in their arms and cherish her. She was wearing a mink coat, a black turtleneck sweater, a pair of patent leather pants, and a pair of tall boots. Standing there, she was the embodiment of purity and seduction. She was indeed very beautiful. However, at this moment, she looked a bit hesitant and tangled. Standing at the gate of Zhang Hai's manor, she hesitated for a long time but didn't press the doorbell. After hesitating for about 10 minutes, she pressed the doorbell, not knowing whether it was because she was frozen or because she had made up her mind. The last one is mine. At this moment, Zhang Hai, Bernice, Daliana, and Marian had already collapsed on the sofa. Daliana was riding on Zhang Hai's back, while Marian was hanging in Zhang Hai's arms and holding his arms tightly. Bernice didn't care whether she was exposed or not. She just put her arms around Zhang Hai's head and let his head lean against her chest. Her legs were also supporting one of Zhang Hai's arms. She didn't care about her vital parts at all. She directly grabbed the last steamed bun with both hands and threw it into her mouth. After that, she started to eat it happily. How could this be? Seeing the last steamed bun disappear, Daliana and Marian instantly lost their strength and collapsed on the sofa helplessly. Bernice was like a general who had won a battle as she smiled quite complacently. Elder sister, don't worry, there are enough steamed buns. However, at this moment, Xueqi couldn't help but smile as she brought out more steamed buns. Looking at these steamed buns, Daliana and Marian, who were still a bit weak, immediately jumped up. Just now, they also grabbed one each. Of course, that was when Zhang Hai went easy on them. They had to admit that although the steamed buns made by Xueqi were not as good in appearance, the taste was almost good, especially after using such good ingredients. Now that there were new steamed buns, they immediately sat at the dining table and prepared to eat. Zhang Hai also climbed up from the sofa. At this moment, Zhang Hai's doorbell rang. They looked at each other curiously. They didn't know who would come at this time. Zhang Hai walked to the door. After picking up the phone, he found a familiar face on the other side. To be honest, he had only met the owner of this face a few times, although their relationship was a bit. Ahem. Jiang? That's great. It's really you. Seeing Zhang Hai's face on the screen, the beauty on the other side immediately said excitedly. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but look back at Bernice and the others. He found that they were indeed looking at him. But the way they looked at Zhang Hai was a bit different. In Azalina's eyes, it was indifference. In Xiaoya's eyes, it was curiosity. As for Daliana and Marian, it was another. Why did they say another? As for Bernice's eyes, they were full of contempt. Why are there so many women looking for Zhang Hai? Ahem, Cheryl, come in quickly. Forcibly ignoring the gazes of the people behind him, Zhang Hai coughed and opened the door. Yes, the person who came was called Cheryl. Her full name was Cheryl Lee. Speaking of her, she was originally an additional character. During the fight between Zhang Hai and Perwalton, she was a victim who accidentally intruded. The relationship between them was a bit messy. Zhang Hai didn't expect that she would come to him alone. But since she came, Zhang Hai couldn't refuse her. After pressing the button to open the door was opened again. Then Cheryl got in the car and drove to Zhang Hai's parking lot. When she got out of the car, she saw Zhang Hai standing at the door, waiting for her. Zhang, this time you have to help Miss Pra no matter what. As soon as she saw Zhang Hai, Cheryl threw herself into Zhang Hai's arms and said worriedly. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai froze for a moment. Miss Pra? Something happened to Perwalton? Let's go in first. Don't worry, take your time. Looking at Cheryl in front of him, Zhang Hai immediately pulled her into the room and said to her. But as soon as she entered the room, Cheryl couldn't help but stare. Because at this time, looking at the women in the room who were dressed very simply, she seemed to have misunderstood. She couldn't help but smile brightly, then looked at Zhang Hai. This is my friend, Cheryl Lee. These two are my daughters, Daliana and Marian. These three are also my friends, Bernice and Littleya. This is Azalina Vicabrio. Seeing that the atmosphere in front of him was a bit cold, Zhang Hai introduced them. But although they introduced each other, there was still some awkwardness. Let's eat first, we can talk about it later. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit awkward, Zhang Hai took the initiative to resolve the situation. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Cheryl didn't say anything. She took off her coat and ate a silent lunch with Zhang Hai and the others. Although there was no sound, everyone ate a lot. It was because these soup dumplings were really delicious. The 7 of them ate a total of 16 steamers. After eating all of Little Ya's soup dumplings, they were satisfied. After drinking some of Zhang Hai's tea, Zhang Hai took Cheryl Lee to the study on the 2nd floor. Although Zhang Hai didn't like reading, he still had a study. This was also a standard. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a place for people to discuss business. After entering the study with Cheryl Lee, Zhang Hai looked at her. What did she mean when she said that she wanted to help Perwalton? Looking at Zhang Hai's gaze, Cheryl Lee temporarily forgot about the delicious soup dumplings and turned around. Zhang, you must help Miss Perwalton. When she mentioned Perwalton, she was a little excited. Slow down, what's going on? The story between Zhang Hai and Perwalton was a bit speechless. The relationship between him and Perwalton wasn't purely that of a boyfriend and girlfriend. However, some things did happen between them that shouldn't have happened. But more importantly, Perwalton and him were business partners. Whether it was the former or the latter, Zhang Hai couldn't be a heartless man. If he could help, he would definitely help. It's like this. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Cheryl seemed to have found a group. After organizing her words, she said to Zhang Hai. The reason was the Walton family. The origin of the Walton family was Sam Walton. He was the one who founded the Walmart department store. After his death, his eldest son originally owned the most shares. Roberson Walton. This man was Perwalton's biological father. This little old man had a good sense of business, but he was actually a very perverted guy. He had a total of 5 children, plus 3 illegitimate children. Perwalton was one of them. However, because her mother died early, she grew up in the Walton family when she was young. Before she grew up to the present, her status was not very secure, and she didn't have a good time in the family. Fortunately, she showed her talent in business, and now she had a firm foothold. The reason for this turmoil came from Perwalton's uncle, Jim Walton. He was the youngest son of Sam Walton, and he was also a genius. Although he didn't inherit his father's most shares, he was ranked 10th on the world's rich list last year, and Perwalton's father, Roberson Walton, was ranked 17th. The world's #1 family had two business geniuses. If one of them didn't compromise, it was bound to become like fire and water. In the past, the position of chairman was always controlled by Roberson. But the position of CEO was controlled by Jim Walton. However, 2 years ago, Roberson took advantage of Jim Walton's weakness, which was the CNN insulting incident. With this excuse, Roberson kept his shares, but kicked him out of the company, and let Dong Mingluan, a foreigner, take over the position of CEO, and let his most talented daughter Per Walton take over Sam's Club. Roberson thought that this was stable, but he didn't expect that this winter, Jim Walton made a comeback. He persuaded most of the shareholders to return to the company. Sam's Club was the first thing he wanted to take back. Originally, Pulla Walton and his father were not in a hurry because they were still in control of the company. But at this time, there was news that Dong Mingluan was actually one of Jim Walton's people. This time they were much more passive. Roberson Walton looked for Dong Mingluan and discussed with him about keeping Sam's Club. However, Dong Mingluan suggested that he join Roberson's camp. He was willing to do so. But he had one condition, and that was to marry Per Walton. After hearing this news, the whole Walton family, including Roberson, was speechless. Per Walton was naturally unwilling, but the family's decision was not up to her. These days, she had a hard time. She had to maintain Sam's Club, and at the same time, she had to deal with Dong Mingluan's love and the family's pressure. Looking at her, Cheryl and the others wanted to inform Jiang Hai at the very beginning. But Per Walton did not let them do so, but there was no use in delaying time. According to Cheryl, the Walton family would hold a banquet in New York the day after tomorrow, and Dong Mingluan would give the Walton family the last time at this banquet. At that time, he would propose to Per Walton on the spot. If she agreed, then it would be fine, but if she didn't, then he would completely lean towards Jim Walton's side. At that time, Sam's Club would still be lost, but Per Walton had to attend this family banquet. She went to attend this morning, but maybe because he was afraid that Cheryl and the others would cause trouble, after Per Walton left, Roberson Walton immediately sent people to seal her manor, and only people were allowed to enter, but not leave. Fortunately, Cheryl returned to China a few days ago and just came back today. Otherwise, she would not have come out to find Jiang Hai. Such a big thing happened. Why didn't you call me? Hearing what Cheryl said, Jiang Hai frowned. His woman, well, Jiang Hai's situation may be a bit special, but after all, she is a woman who had sex with him. And Jiang Hai also knows that she actually likes women. Letting her marry another man with such grievances, Jiang Hai will not agree. We don't have your phone number. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Cheryl shrugged helplessly and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. It seems that I really didn't give them my phone number. You should have come to see me earlier. Which day are they holding the banquet? Looking at Cheryl in front of him, Jiang Hai let out a sigh and said affirmatively, but he was actually a little lacking in confidence. Looking up at Cheryl, Jiang Hai asked her. November 6th, which is the day after tomorrow. Looking at Jiang Hai, Cheryl said seriously. I have to think of a way to sneak in. Touching his chin, Jiang Hai muttered in a low voice. This is a troublesome matter. Needless to say, the security of the world's largest company's family banquet is definitely not weak. Although Jiang Hai has 4 times the physical fitness of an ordinary person, it is impossible for him to break in. But how to sneak in is also a problem. You don't have to sneak in. You have an invitation. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Cheryl couldn't help but stare for a moment. Then, she took out a magnetic card from her handbag. That was the invitation card. When she handed it over, someone would naturally come to verify Jiang Hai's information. I still have an invitation? Looking at the magnetic card handed over, Jiang Hai was a little confused. Aren't those people guarding against me? Yes, although this banquet is a Walmart family banquet, those who have important cooperative relationships with the Walton Company will also be invited. Last year, you helped the Sam's Club of Walmart earn hundreds of millions of dollars. You are naturally an important partner. Your name is on the 3rd table in the 1st row. It is very close to the front. If this didn't happen, this card should have been sent last month. Listening to Cheryl's words in front of him, Jiang Hai was speechless. I also have this kind of treatment? In fact, Jiang Hai is too low-key. In fact, as long as he is high profile, He can go to any banquet near Boston or New York. No one will refuse a person with billions of dollars. No one. Chapter 635. What's wrong? Can't sleep? Looking at Cheryl Lee sitting on the balcony, Zhang Hai walked over with 2 bottles of water. After handing her a bottle, he asked while sitting opposite her. Today, Cheryl stayed in Zhang Hai's manor. However, she didn't stay in Zhang Hai's room. After all, it wasn't very good. Moreover, the two weren't very familiar with each other. Without Pro Walton in the middle, their relationship wasn't very close. Therefore, she stayed in the guest room. It was already 2 o'clock in the morning. Zhang Hai was a little thirsty after sleeping, so he got up to look for water to drink. But unfortunately, he drank all the water in his room. Therefore, he went downstairs to get 2 bottles of water. When he came back, he saw Cheryl sitting on the balcony on the 2nd floor, looking at the moon outside. Zhang Hai's balcony was semi-enclosed. The entire balcony was made of glass. But in summer, the glass could be raised and turned into an open-air balcony. In winter, the glass could be lowered, but it wouldn't affect the view outside. Therefore, in winter, Zhang Hai liked to sit here and look outside. At night, he could also sit here and look at the stars. I can't sleep sometimes. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Cheryl Lee took the bottle of water handed over by Zhang Hai. She forced a smile, opened the bottle, took a sip, and then looked outside in a daze. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. Just trust me. Looking at her appearance, it was obvious that she was worried about Pro Walton. But with Zhang Hai here, he wouldn't let anything happen to Pro Walton. Well, I trust you very much. We all trust you very much. However, it's still necessary to be worried. It's just like when your family members undergo a minor surgery. Although you know that the success rate of this surgery is very high, it's still your family members. It would be strange if you don't worry. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Cheryl pursed her lips and said seriously. But trusting Zhang Hai and not worrying were 2 different things. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai smiled. It was a good thing that Pro Walton had these girlfriends. Don't worry and stay here. I promise to bring Pro Walton back to you in one piece. After standing up, Zhang Hai patted Cheryl's shoulder and said earnestly. He had already talked to Cheryl about this matter. This time, only Zhang Hai would go to the banquet. Cheryl would stay in the manor. If they couldn't come to an agreement, Zhang Hai might run away with Pro Walton. But if Cheryl were to join them, it would be difficult. I understand. You should go to sleep. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Cheryl looked at Zhang Hai gratefully. Zhang Hai would go to New York tomorrow. She had to think about Zhang Hai. After looking at Cheryl Lee, Zhang Hai waved his hand and walked into his room. He didn't know when Cheryl fell asleep. The next morning, when he went to have breakfast, she wasn't there. When Zhang Hai was having breakfast, he told Delina and Marion about this matter. Delina and Marion had an impression of Pro Walton. She was a strange big sister, but she gave them a lot of things. As for Bernice, Little Ya, and Azalina, they didn't know who she was. But since she was Zhang Hai's receiver, it was necessary for Zhang Hai to help. Therefore, after having breakfast, Zhang Hai drove his battle shield and left. He went straight to the Hilton Hotel in New York. Because tomorrow was the Walton family's gathering time, in order to entertain these people who came from all over the country, it was impossible for everyone to come at the same time. There were always some who came early. Therefore, the Walton family had already booked rooms for these people in the hotel according to their specifications. According to the Walton family's information, Zhang Hai was 27 years old this year and had a net worth of about $2 billion. Last year, he brought $137,618,290 in pre-tax profits to Sam's Club in Walmart. Although he was not the top VIP partner, he was still a top VIP partner. After Zhang Hai showed his driver's license and the invitation card, he received a key to a suite. He got the key to a top-class suite. Although it was not a presidential suite, it was still a top-class suite. There were 3 rooms in the suite: a small room, a large living room, a study, and a master bedroom. Of course, generally, people like Zhang Hai would definitely bring bodyguards with them. The small room was for the bodyguards to live in. However, because Zhang Hai's purpose here was not so simple, he did not bring Azalina with him. After entering the suite, Zhang Hai looked around. He liked this place very much. The window of the master bedroom was a one-sided window. You could see outside from the inside, but you couldn't see inside from the outside. However, the transparency was quite good, just like ordinary glass. No matter what he did, it would be much more comfortable. After a simple rest in the room, Zhang Hai went downstairs to the buffet restaurant for lunch. After lunch, he went to Fifth Avenue. He wanted to buy a set of clothes there. Zhang Hai was used to being undisciplined. In the past, when he went to parties, banquets and so on, he would wear his expensive outdoor sportswear. His set of clothes was actually not cheaper than a suit, but it did not look classy. But every time, it was someone else who invited him, so no matter what he wore, the other party had to endure it. Fortunately, he didn't often attend these events, but tonight was different. If he had only been invited to the banquet, he would probably still wear this. Today, he was leaving with Walton, so no matter what, he had to wear something more formal. So, he was prepared to buy a suit. Zhang Hai had worn a suit twice in his life. The first time was when he got married. He used the remaining 3,000 renminbi after his mother finished her business and bought a suit. But he only wore it once. After the wedding, it was hanging in his and Qi Li's new home. But when he left, he purposely took this suit with him. Now, it was hanging in his house in Bing City. He definitely did not want to wear it again. There was another suit, which Qi Li had bought for him during Chinese New Year last year. He only wore it once and hung it in his house in Bing City. Other than that, he did not have any other suits. The suit he was wearing today was probably the same. Originally, Zhang Hai wanted to buy a suit that cost about $1,000. But after calling Moses Adams, he advised him to buy a better suit. First, it was because Zhang Hai was not short of money. Second, Zhang Hai was considered a respectable person now. It was reasonable for him to have a suit in his house. He could not just buy a suit everywhere he went in the future. Also, it was too cheap to wear a suit that cost $1,000 to attend the Walton family's banquet. So, Zhang Hai was persuaded by Moses Adams to go to a custom-made suit shop on Fifth Avenue. When he walked in, an old man looked at Zhang Hai. He hesitated for a while and stood up. "Sir, what can I do for you?" Looking at Zhang Hai, the old man looked at him curiously. I'm going to buy a suit." Hearing what the old man said, Zhang Hai asked embarrassedly. "Oh, are you going to order it, or have you already ordered it?" Hearing that Zhang Hai was here to buy a suit, the old man couldn't help but ask curiously. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai scratched his head. "Do I have to order this thing? I haven't ordered it. I want to buy a set directly. I don't know if you have it here." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the old man froze for a moment, then laughed, then smiled at Zhang Hai and shook his head gently. "Sir, we don't sell finished suits here. We only order suits here. I don't know why you came here, but I don't advise you to buy our clothes, because to be honest, our clothes are a bit too expensive." Looking at Zhang Hai, the old man chuckled, then shrugged and said, "Oh, how expensive." Hearing his words, Zhang Hai's interest was piqued. Moses Adams recommended him to come to this shop. There must be a reason for it to be expensive. But the old man himself said that it was ridiculously expensive. This made Zhang Hai a little confused. As he walked towards the old man. The old man also opened the sample album in front of him. Sure enough, after glancing at the prices on the sample, Zhang Hai's heart jumped twice for no reason. It was because the suits were indeed ridiculously expensive. Almost all of them cost $80,000 to $90,000, and they were only the cheapest ones. Some cost more than $100,000, and some even cost $200,000. Damn it, were these even suits? This is robbery. It's very expensive. To be honest, there aren't many people who come here to order suits all year round, but we can make a lot of money. The old man saw Zhang Hai's expression and said with a smile. In fact, what Zhang Hai didn't know was that this Alexander Amos custom-made suit shop was the most expensive custom-made suit shop in the world. Except for the suits made with special diamonds, this shop was the most expensive among the normal shops. The expensive men's suits were purely handmade, such as Amos, Armani, and the like. In the top society, these suits weren't ranked. Generally, when one went to a top party, these suits wouldn't appear. The ones that appeared more often, such as the Booker brothers, Zegna suits, Brioni, K5, these suits were the suits worn by the real rich. Armani, Amos, those were the full nouveau riche. And this Alexander Amos was the top brand of custom-made suits. After hearing the old man's explanation, Zhang Hai was a little embarrassed, but he was still a little embarrassed to leave. Money is not a problem, but I have to wear it when I go to the party tomorrow night, so it's a little troublesome. Looking at the old man, Zhang Hai hesitated and said this. His original meaning was that if he couldn't rush it out tomorrow, then he didn't want it, but there weren't many people in the United States who understood the meaning of his words. In their ears, Zhang Hai was saying that he liked these suits very much, but he had to rush to wear them tomorrow and asked if he could make them. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the old man here couldn't help but be a little surprised. He didn't expect Zhang Hai to be so straightforward. If I have to wear it tomorrow, I'll be greedy tonight. I'll get someone to come over and help. I'll definitely make the suit before noon tomorrow. You can come over and try it on at noon tomorrow. If it doesn't fit, you can change it in the afternoon. If you're sure you want it, then choose a version and material. Hearing the old man's words, Zhang Hai cursed in his heart. Fine, this time he must buy it. But just as Moses Adams said, he really should have a good suit. Then he looked carefully. The material of the suit here was mainly a mixture of wool, cashmere, and silk. It was warm, light, smooth, and had some flexibility. At least, it wouldn't break when he raised his arm. The price was different because of the strength of the mixture. The starting price of pure wool was $70,000, and the starting price of those with more cashmere was $90,000. Zhang Hai touched these materials and finally chose the material with more cashmere, which was the starting price of $90,000. When choosing the edition, Zhang Hai was a little confused, because the suit was also divided into editions. It was reasonable to say that it was divided into 3 types. One was a casual suit, the second was a formal suit, and the third was a business suit. But in Zhang Hai's opinion, it was actually a matter of how many buttons there were. A casual suit has 1 button, a formal suit has 2 buttons, and a business suit has 3 buttons. That's all. He wasn't a person who liked to wear buttons, so he asked the old man what he should wear to attend a top banquet. The old man told Zhang Hai that as long as it was a suit, the rest didn't matter. Very few people would pay attention to these. After all, there were many rich people who buttoned up their suits. Who would care about how many buttons the suit had? After hearing the old man's words, Zhang Hai made a casual suit. After paying $10,000 as a deposit, Zhang Hai left. The old man also called some tailors to help. All the suits in this shop were handmade, and each suit required 16,000 needles. It would be impossible for one person to make it without a month or 2. But Zhang Hai wanted it tomorrow, so they saved time and hired more people to make it. At noon the next day, Zhang Hai received a call. The preliminary design was done. Zhang Hai went to the shop and tried it on. It was indeed a handmade suit. It was very comfortable to wear, but in the old man's eyes, it was still somewhat lacking. While the old man helped Zhang Hai make it more suitable, Zhang Hai also went to buy some matching items. The old man gave Zhang Hai a shirt, but the tie, belt, and leather shoes had to be bought by Zhang Hai himself. Since the suit cost $92,300, Zhang Hai didn't need to save on the tie and other things. The leather shoes he bought were from Lang Fanza. You probably haven't heard of it, right? In fact, Zhang Hai hadn't heard of it either. But this was the most expensive shop on 5th Avenue. It was said that they had the best leather shoes in the world. They were made of crocodile leather, which was not as comfortable as outdoor shoes. The belt and tie he bought were all from the Donkey brand. Once he wore them, the aura of a nouveau riche was quite heavy. After shopping, he returned to the suit shop. Zhang Hai tried it on again. He had to admit that after the modification, it was indeed more comfortable to wear than before. Coupled with Zhang Hai's belt, leather shoes, white and blue striped shirt, and tie, it was indeed quite intimidating. Especially the inverted triangle Zhang Hai wore. It really looked a little handsome. The male hormones in this suit were indeed more obvious than outdoor clothes, but Zhang Hai still didn't like to wear it. After paying the full amount, Zhang Hai took the car directly back to the hotel. On the way back, there was a traffic jam for a while. When he arrived at the hotel, a lot of people had already arrived. There was only about half an hour left before the banquet started. After Jiang Hai parked the car, he went directly to the venue. After all, it was the gathering of the world's largest family. The security here was quite strict, as Jiang Hai thought. It was not an exaggeration to say that there was a guard every 3 steps and a guard every 5 steps. After Jiang Hai went upstairs, he showed his invitation card. After confirming his identity, a waiter led him into the main banquet hall. At this time, there were already a lot of people in the main banquet hall. Jiang Hai looked around. There were almost 200 or 300 people. About half of them were men, and the other half were women. Many of them were young women. These people's clothes were gorgeous and simple. They were holding wine glasses, and their eyes were shining as they walked around the hall. For these women, Jiang Hai had heard of them before. These women should be the legendary socialites. To be able to enter this party hall, they estimated that they had paid a big price. Now they were looking for their prey. When Jiang Hai entered the room, these women's gazes swept over him. A suit that cost more than $90,000, a tie that cost more than $10,000, a belt that cost more than $20,000, a pair of leather shoes that cost more than $30,000, and a Patek Philippe watch that cost at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. Luke was definitely going to marry a real rich man. Although his face was a little unfamiliar, it didn't matter. As long as he was rich, they were interested in getting to know him. Just as these women were about to come out, Jiang Hai, who had been looking around after entering the room, also saw a figure he was looking for in the crowd. He immediately grinned and rushed over. Chapter 636. In the middle of the banquet, Prawalton was wearing a black lace evening dress. She was standing proudly in the middle of the venue, holding a glass of martini in her hand, but her eyes were not focused. Looking at her, many young talents who wanted to come up and say hello couldn't help but stop. In this circle, who doesn't know that Prawalton has a strange temper? Prawalton, congratulations. But sometimes, there will be some exceptions. For example, at this time, a middle-aged man with brown hair, came over with a smile on his face and looked at Prawalton and said with a smile, "Uncle Jim?" Looking at the man who came over, Prawalton frowned and said with disgust, "Haha, your expression is not a very friendly expression. I have heard about your matter. After today, you will be Dong Mingluan's person. I have to admit that your family's move is really beautiful, but do you think you can keep Sam's club like this?" Looking at Prawalton's face, Jim Walton chuckled, then walked to her and whispered softly. Hearing his words, Prawalton's face became more ugly. "This is our family's matter. I think Uncle Jim has no need and power to intervene." Looking at Jim Walton, Prawalton took a deep breath and said with a serious face. Hearing Prawalton's words, Jim Walton just smiled with a trace of disdain. How can he let go of what he wants so easily? "Prawalton, you are here." But just as he was about to fight back, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Then he looked back and found a tall yellow man standing behind him. Looking at the smile on his face, it was not difficult to see that this guy should know Prawalton, but he had no impression of this person. Looking at Prawalton, he found that she was completely stunned at this time. Her face was full of disbelief. "Hello, young man, are you Prawalton's friend?" Looking at the shock on Prawalton's face, it means that Prawalton knows who he is, but she didn't think that he would come, and he can't sneak in like this, so he may be someone who knows Prawalton. Jim Walton is on the Forbes list this year, 10th in the world. Of course, he is not a fool. With a turn of his eyes, he probably knew the identity of Jiang Hai, so he smiled and said to Jiang Hai, "Yes, I am Prawalton's friend, and you are." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Jiang Hai also looked at him. "Of course. I am Prawalton's Jim." Looking at Jiang Hai, the middle-aged man took the initiative to stretch out his hand. After Jiang Hai heard his words, he was also stunned. This is Jim Walton, the world's 10th richest businessman with a total asset of more than $30 billion? He looks like an ordinary little old man, but as the saying goes, a slap does not hit a smiling face. Although he knows that this little old man is the ultimate villain, he still stretched out his hand and shook his hand. "Then you young people talk. I will go see the others first." Seeing that Jiang Hai's hand had left his, Jim Walton smiled and left the place, walking into the distance. After Jim left, Walton stepped forward in an instant and took Zhang Hai's hand. She was a little excited at this time. "Why are you here?" Looking at Zhang Hai, Walton took a deep breath, suppressed the thoughts in her heart, and then asked Zhang Hai in a low voice. Before this, she had been very conflicted. When she thought of marrying someone else, especially a man, she felt as disgusted as a dead mouse. Today she was ready. Even if she had to hand over the rights of Sam's club, she would never marry Dong Mingluan. But at this time, Zhang Hai unexpectedly appeared. This made this woman, who was originally very nervous, suddenly have a trace of backbone. But then she thought about it, with Zhang Hai's strength, how could he move these people? But with Zhang Hai by her side, it was much better than fighting alone. Seeing the look in her eyes, Zhang Hai smiled and stretched out his hand, gently touched her head, and then pulled her into his arms. Walton felt Zhang Hai's action at first. At first, she was stunned. Then she calmed down and quietly leaned on Zhang Hai's shoulder. Her hands also stretched out. Just like that, she wrapped them around Zhang Hai's waist. However, what he didn't know was that this scene had caused everyone's eyeglasses to shatter. Almost everyone's eyes and the corners of their eyes looked at Zhang Hai and Walton, with a trace of shock on their faces. Who is Walton? The little princess of the Walton family usually showed the coldest face to people. In the face of the pursuit of excellent men, she was disdainful. But what the hell is going on today? Maybe it's really a ghost. Would she also lean on a man's body like a little bird? No matter whether others believed it or not, they wouldn't believe it anyway. But at this time, this scene was in front of them, and they couldn't not believe it. Now they felt that their hearts, livers, glasses, and internal organs were almost broken. At the same time, some people who were still jealous of Dong Mingluan's possibility of winning the beauty's heart were secretly happy at this time. They seemed to see a green forest growing on Dong Mingluan's head. "Don't worry, I will solve your problem." But at this time, Zhang Hai and Walton, who were hugging each other, didn't know what the people were thinking. Lifting Walton's face, Zhang Hai gently kissed her cheek, and said in her ear. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Walton nodded seriously. Americans were better at expressing their thoughts. Now, even if Zhang Hai kissed her lips, she might not be shy, let alone just kissing her face. But with Zhang Hai's support, she was more confident that she could compete with the Walton family. "What are you doing? Let go." At this time, suddenly, a voice shouted. As the voice came, Zhang Hai and Walton also looked in the distance, only to see that behind the crowd, two people were slowly walking over. The middle-aged man walking in front looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He was a white fat man, and at this time, his face was full of anger. Behind the fat man, there was a white old man with a sense of indecency. His white hair was combed disrespectfully, and he wore a pair of brown glasses on his face. When he saw Zhang Hai and Walton, he was surprised, but he didn't care and slowly walked over. Seeing the two people coming over, the people who were watching the fun made a circle. Some people envied Zhang Hai for being able to break the thorny rose, but they were secretly amused. They knew that this time, there was a good show to watch, and the most likely thing was that Zhang Hai was finished. "You bastard! Who are you? What are you doing here? Where is the security? How can you let such a person in?" After walking in front of Zhang Hai, the man shouted loudly as if he had gone crazy. For him, Zhang Hai was slapping his face today. Today was the Walton family's gathering, and also the day when he might marry Walton. Why did this guy, Zhang Hai, suddenly appear, hugging his fiancée in front of him? F***ck, this villain's sense of déjà vu is too strong. Me? Of course, I was invited by you. My name is Zhang Hai, the owner of the Soaring Dragon Manor, but who are you? Hearing the fat man's words, the security guard hesitated for a moment, but still walked over. Although today was the Walton family's gathering, and Dong Mingluan had no right to ask the security guard to drive people away, after all, he would soon be the son-in-law of the Walton family, and at the same time, the current president. It was inevitable to give him some face. Looking at the security guard who was walking over, Zhang Hai chuckled. After hearing Zhang Hai's words, many people's eyes, which were originally looking forward to a good show, suddenly changed at this time. They might not know Zhang Hai's name, but it was not an exaggeration to say that the Soaring Dragon Manor was well known in the top social circles of the United States. After all, he almost monopolized the sales of the best beef. Many people had approached Zhang Hai, wanting to cooperate with him in the beef project, but they had no way to do so. Zhang Hai would not attend these banquets. This was the third time. The first time, he was not famous, and he only met Prawalton. The second time he was in China. Today was the third time. These people had no way to contact Zhang Hai. Now that Zhang Hai suddenly appeared, and it seemed that he had a close relationship with Prawalton, they could not help but think. Soaring Dragon Manor. Since you are a guest here, please abide by some rules. After hearing Zhang Hai's self-introduction, Dong Mingluan hesitated. He was the current president of the Walmart Group. It was reasonable to say that Sam's Club was also a part of the Walmart Group. Although he could not intervene, he knew about the income of Sam's Club. Zhang Hai's beef had helped Sam's Club earn more than $130 million this year. Of course, this was only the direct profit. In addition to this direct profit, there were many other ancillary profits. For example, if one went to the supermarket to buy beef, it was impossible for ordinary people to just buy beef. They would definitely buy some other things. This was called the ancillary sales fee. Zhang Hai's beef had been in the market for a year. Oh no, in fact, only half a year. After half a year of fermentation, it had formed a reputation and brand effect in the upper class of the United States. Zhang Hai's beef was sold here, which was equivalent to a living advertisement. According to this year's calculation, the income of Sam's Club staff related to the beef was about $300 million. $300 million was pure profit. Those directors and the like could not ignore it. After all, Dong Mingluan was only a senior worker, although he had some power now. But his power was given by the board of directors. He had to make money for these people. Therefore, he could not afford to offend the owner of Soaring Dragon Manor. Although he felt that his head was emitting green light, he could not bear it. His eyes were burning with anger as he said to Zhang Hai, "Unruly? I don't feel that there is anything unruly. Prawalton is my girlfriend. There is nothing wrong with me hugging my girlfriend." But after listening to Dong Mingluan's words, Zhang Hai domineeringly hugged Prawalton, then raised his head and said to Dong Mingluan with an arrogant face. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the people present could not help but burst into an uproar. "Are you here to make trouble?" Looking at Zhang Hai, Dong Mingluan narrowed his eyes and said with a face full of anger, "You can think whatever you want, but I heard that you are ganging up to bully my girlfriend, so I came here mainly to say one thing." Looking at the people in front of him, Zhang Hai raised his hand and said with a serious face, "My beef is sold to Prawalton. If Sam's Club is not under the control of Prawalton, then I will not sell to you. We have not signed a long-term supply contract. My beef is very popular. Before this, I just refused the opportunity to provide beef to the Dubai royal family. But I think as long as I am willing, this transaction can be established at any time. In other words, it is now a seller's market." Looking at the people in front of him, Zhang Hai did not know who they were, but it did not hinder Zhang Hai from saying these words. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, everyone present took a deep breath. He dared to threaten the Walton family? This Zhang Hai was really a calf who was not afraid of tigers. Now, it was up to the Walton family to accept Zhang Hai's words. However, if the Walton family really fell out with Zhang Hai, then would they have the opportunity to cooperate with Zhang Hai's Soaring Dragon Manor? As for the Dubai royal family that Zhang Hai mentioned, didn't he already refuse? In this matter, whoever came first would get it first. No one would complain about money. They had also tested Zhang Hai's beef before, and it could not be imitated. Then, this seller's market would be very stable. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the audience was silent at this moment. Everyone looked at the Walton family and Dong Mingluan. The final decision of this matter depended on them. As for Prawalton, at this time, she had completely lost the strong woman she used to be. She just hugged Zhang Hai's waist and lowered her head. She had never felt as safe as she did today. She knew that Zhang Hai's chips were not light. She also knew that she and Zhang Hai might not be able to reach the end. But what did it matter? With Zhang Hai by her side, she suddenly felt that her experience with Zhang Hai might not be so bad. Chapter 637. Mr. Zhang, our company's personnel transfer should have nothing to do with you. Dong Mingluan's face was so ugly that it made people's hair stand on end. But at this time, he had to stand up. His goal was very clear. If Jim Walton's goal was the company, and Sam's Club was the first step, then he knew that it was impossible for him to get the company. But if he could marry Per Walton, it would be equivalent to Sam's Club being under his control. In that case, he would be the son-in-law of the Walton family and control Sam's Club. His position in the business world would be unshakable. He was ready to take both the money and the woman. And such an open scheme made people unable to do anything. No matter how talented and capable Per Walton was, she was just a woman, an illegitimate daughter. In order to keep the power in his hands, Per Walton's father would not let Sam's Club fall into the hands of her brother. So, it was necessary to agree to his proposal. But Zhang Hai, who had suddenly appeared, had messed up his plans. It seemed that he couldn't control his lust now. Although he had long regarded Pulla Walton, this iceberg royal sister, as his possession, he did not care about her. But now, Zhang Hai's actions made it clear to outsiders that his head wasn't just an ordinary green. And if what Zhang Hai said was true, his efforts would be in vain. If Zhang Hai really refused to cooperate with the Walmart Group, then Jim Walton would not provoke Zhang Hai even if he did not want Sam's Club. Because Jim Walton was first and foremost a businessman, and second, he was the youngest son who wanted to seize the family property. If the Walmart Group he took over was full of holes, he would not be happy. And most importantly, the directors of the Walmart Group would not let the wealth that Zhang Hai brought to them disappear just like that. Yes, the personnel transfer of the Walmart Group has nothing to do with me, but my beef has something to do with me. If Per Walton did not control Sam's Club, I would not sell it to you. Looking at Dong Mingluan in front of him, Zhang Hai glanced at Per Walton beside him. Zhang Hai had no right to their family matters, and he did not want to interfere. But he would protect Per Walton's interests. You! Hearing Zhang Hai's tough retort, Dong Mingluan could not help but be speechless for a while. He would not shout, "Do you think you are the only one with beef in the world?" He was very clear that Zhang Hai's beef was indeed unique in the world. Although he doesn't know why, but it's true that only Zhang Hai's beef is at that level in this world. Even his ordinary beef tasted much better than ordinary beef. When an entire cow entered the Walmart Group, the special grade beef would be removed and placed in Sam's Club for sale. This was because the beef sold there was expensive. Ordinary beef would also be sold in a special area in ordinary Walmart supermarkets. Although the quality of the beef sold there was the same as ordinary beef, the price was 1/3 more expensive. The beef in Zhang Hai's manor was now a brand, an irreplaceable brand. Zhang Hai didn't care about the outflow of live cattle, but once the live cattle left the grassland, they would gradually degenerate, and they wouldn't be able to raise them at all. Zhang Hai didn't care about the outflow of live cattle, but once the live cattle left the grassland, they would gradually degenerate, and they wouldn't be able to raise them. Angus cows weren't like he cows. In essence, there was a big difference. Not everyone could raise Angus cows to kill he cows. Because of this, Zhang Hai dared to call out Dong Mingluan, but Dong Mingluan didn't dare to say anything. "Mr. Zhang, we are having a party today. It is a happy party. Let's not talk about business today. I will reflect what you said to the board of directors. Now, it is time to be happy." Looking at the atmosphere on the scene, it was about to drop to the freezing point. At this time, Roberson Walton, who had been standing at the back, said with a smile to Zhang Hai. Then, without giving Zhang Hai time to react, he raised his glass and said loudly to the crowd. Hearing his words, everyone also raised their glasses. The party became lively again, but this time, many people's eyes were consciously or unconsciously glancing at Zhang Hai. "Young man, it's a pleasure to meet you. I will seriously consider what you said." However, Roberson Walton walked in front of Zhang Hai and smiled at Zhang Hai. Then, without any desire to talk to Zhang Hai, he left directly. As for Dong Mingluan, he was the same. After fiercely glaring at Zhang Hai, he also left. He felt insulted. Won't you be exposed like this?" Seeing them all leave, Per Walton, who was still in Zhang Hai's arms, raised her head and looked at Zhang Hai. She gently bit her lips and said with some worry, "It doesn't matter. I guess this time you will be the president of Sam's Club. At that time, you can help me block those people with ulterior motives. What do you want to eat? I will get it for you." Looking at Per Walton's appearance, Zhang Hai smiled and scratched her nose with his hand, then said to her with a chuckle. Feeling Zhang Hai's action, Prawalton's eyes were a little blurred. I don't want to eat anything. I want to go with you. Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton said seriously. Go. Where to? Looking at Prawalton with a puzzled look, Zhang Hai asked strangely. To your room. But Prawalton is more direct than Zhang Hai. A pair of fiery eyes looked at Zhang Hai. Feeling the passion in her heart, Zhang Hai did not hesitate. After a chuckle, he pulled Prawalton away. Looking at the two leaving figures, many men showed a look that only men can understand. As for Dong Mingluan, he was even more hateful. He felt that he was now a ninja turtle. After the two left the banquet, they took the elevator directly to the floor of Zhang Hai's suite and entered the room. As soon as the door closed, Prawalton had already rushed up, her hands around Zhang Hai's neck, and she kissed Zhang Hai's mouth heavily. Now she really doesn't know how to describe her heart. The sense of security brought by Zhang Hai broke out at this time. These days, she had been thinking of a way, but she found that this was an open scheme. This was a dead knot. Her family would definitely not let the power of Walmart fall into someone else's hands because of her relationship with Dong Mingluan. So it seemed that her relationship with Dong Mingluan was a dead knot. The only thing she can do is to announce today that she will resign as the president of Sam's Club. In this way, she can protect herself. But for a career woman, her career is actually higher than everything else. To make such a decision, one could see how bitter her heart was. But at this time, Zhang Hai was like a prince on a white horse, descending from the sky, stepping on colorful clouds. Not only did he save her, but he also saved her career. Now Prawalton's inner feelings completely broke out, and she completely took the initiative. As the two of them kissed passionately, the temperature in the room continued to rise. Unknowingly, the two of them came to the sofa in the living room. At this time, the two of them were basically naked. Along with a meandering low shout, there was a rhythmic drumbeat in the room. 10 minutes later, the battlefield between the two of them rolled from the sofa to the floor, then to the wall, to the door, to the carpet in the room, and by the time they reached the bed again, it was already 2 hours later. During this time, Zhang Hai has already done it 3 times, but Prawalton didn't seem to know fatigue and was still strong. At this time, she was lying on Zhang Hai's body, with her hands around Zhang Hai's head, kissing him deeply. At the same time, she let Zhang Hai's hands grab her 2 indescribable places. Her body was constantly moving, and she had no intention of stopping. You can't take it like this. When Prawalton finally took a breath, Zhang Hai couldn't help but smack her butt, and then said to Prawalton helplessly. It's fine, it's fine. I'll be yours tonight. I want to be with you for a night, a whole night. If the front can't do it, I still have the back. If the back can't do it, I still have the mouth. Today, I just want to be with you. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Prawalton shook her head frantically, her eyes staring at Zhang Hai. Her eyes were full of passion. Looking at Prawalton's appearance, Zhang Hai knew that she was serious. However, although Zhang Hai usually had a good mentality, he really didn't admire anyone in this regard. Today, he was going to tame this wild horse. With a flip, he pressed Prawalton under his body again. Zhang Hai's battle began. A night without words. Even if there were words, they couldn't be described, so just treat it as a night without words. When the next morning's sun shone into the hotel room, Zhang Hai was also groggily awakened by the urge to pee. He covered his eyes with his hand and glanced at the phone next to the bedside table. Unknowingly, it was already past 7 in the morning. Just as he was about to move, he found that his indescribable place was still connected to Prawalton's back. When he moved, Prawalton, who was in his arms, couldn't help but moan softly. Last night, Prawalton was indeed abnormally crazy. As she said, if the front couldn't do it, then the mouth, if the mouth couldn't do it, then the back. In the end, Zhang Hai didn't remember how many times he came, but their sheets were completely wet. Looking at the situation between the two, Zhang Hai slowly withdrew, but when he withdrew, some cough flowed out. Feeling that something was wrong, Prawalton couldn't help but wake up in an instant. She touched her back, then looked at Zhang Hai, and couldn't help but blush. Then she wanted to get out of bed and go to the bathroom, but just as her feet touched the ground, she couldn't help but cry out softly. She was so crazy last night. Although Zhang Hai had already transferred spiritual energy to her. But spiritual energy couldn't cure her craziness 100%, so some pain and soft feet were inevitable. Let's go together. Looking at her appearance, Zhang Hai also smiled and got out of bed. To be honest, his feet were also a little soft. Picking up Prawalton beside him, Zhang Hai went to the bathroom with her. After going to the bathroom, the two took a shower together, but when taking a shower, it was inevitable. Men everyone knows. Do you still need it? Let's continue. Seeing the changes in Zhang Hai, Prawalton couldn't help but smile at Zhang Hai. Forget it. Your body can't stand it. Hearing what Prawalton said, Zhang Hai's mind shook, but then he shook his head firmly. He is not looking for a professional woman. Prawalton is his woman. Well, one of them, he won't let her be too tired. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Prawalton chuckled, but her hands touched him. It doesn't matter, I may not be able to do that, but my mouth and hands have recovered. After whispering in Zhang Hai's ear, she squatted down and began to do the unspeakable war. About half an hour later, the two took a shower again and returned to the room. Zhang Hai let Prawalton lean for a while, and he went to change the sheets first. Then the two didn't wear clothes and just lay on the bed naked. Zhang, do you know my story? Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton hesitated for a moment, then took the initiative to ask Zhang Hai. Well, I really don't know. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai thought for a moment. He really didn't seem to be familiar with Prawalton. He only knew that her name was Prawalton, and he also knew her body structure, but he really didn't know her background. Let me tell you. Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton laid in Zhang Hai's arms and said to Zhang Hai. Speaking of Prawalton's background, it wasn't very strange, it was a bit melodramatic. Her mother used to be Roberson Walton's secretary. In China, there was a tradition of the secretary doing the work, and when there was nothing to do, the secretary. Cough. When Roberson Walton was 30 years old, he and Pra Walton's mother gave birth to her. But that woman wasn't a qualified mother. In fact, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that she was raised by AB*TCH. After exchanging Prawalton for $3 million, she ran away with a man. Prawalton was an illegitimate daughter, but she was raised by Roberson Walton. But because of her mother, Roberson Walton didn't like her, Roberson's wife didn't like her, and her brothers and sisters didn't like her either. In such an environment, Prawalton developed her current temper. It was very strange, but also very stubborn. However, if she put it this way, at most, she was just a girl with a strange personality. But everything started when she was 14 years old. It wasn't the first time that Prawalton had sex with Zhang Hai, and she liked women. It all started from that time. Zhang Hai didn't want any plot to abuse the owner. Here, Zhang Hai simply skipped over it. In short, it was related to her family, and Prawalton had already taken revenge. But after that incident, Prawalton no longer trusted men, because in her opinion, men were unreliable. From then on, she was only interested in girls, because she felt that only women wouldn't hurt women. But later, she found that she seemed to be thinking too much. Indeed, there were many women who took pleasure in hurting other women, but that was another story. Later, when she had money and power, she also collected a lot of girls, like Cheryl and the others. After hearing Prawalton's story, Zhang Hai held her tightly in his arms. He didn't think that this girl's previous experience was like this. No wonder she didn't care about men. But now, it seemed that he was really a lucky man. You're the first man to walk in here. I hope you can always live here. I don't want to marry you, because I've investigated your situation, but I like you very much, very much. Let's maintain the current situation, okay? Until we die. Leaning on Zhang Hai's chest, listening to Zhang Hai's strong heartbeat, Prawalton whispered. Of course, no problem. Looking at the woman in front of him, Zhang Hai made a promise seriously. Maybe he couldn't give her much. Prawalton was the same as other people. Zhang Hai's other women were all given by him. But Prawalton wasn't something that Zhang Hai could give. They were equal to each other. Now, Zhang Hai could give her what she wanted, so he wouldn't be stingy with these things. I want it again. Let's continue. Hearing Zhang Hai's promise, Prawalton couldn't help but raise her head and say with a smile. It was said that sweet talk was the most effective attack on a woman. Zhang Hai didn't know how to sweet talk, but because she knew his character, Prawalton knew that Zhang Hai would definitely keep his words. Forget it. Stay here obediently. You haven't eaten well for the past few days, right? I can feel your ribs. Do you want to eat something? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but slap her meaty part again, then sat up and said to her. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Prawalton shook Zhang Hai's arm coquettishly. I don't want to eat. I just want to eat you. Prawalton said, while sweeping Zhang Hai's lower part. I'll deal with you after the meal. Feeling Prawalton's movements, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. This girl was really crazy. Slapping her hand away, Zhang Hai shook his head and stood up. He put on the bathrobe next to him, picked up the phone in the room, and called the front desk to order a table of food. Whether Prawalton was hungry or not, Zhang Hai was hungry. Chapter 638. The Hilton Hotel was quite fast. Although one of their heirs was quite slow, the chef here was still very capable. About half an hour later, a dining cart had already appeared in front of Zhang Hai's room. After opening the door and giving the person a tip, Zhang Hai did not let the person in, because at this time, Prawalton was still naked. He personally pushed the cart into the room. After seeing the food, Prawalton was still naked. After seeing the food, she was not hungry at all. In fact, she was quite hungry now. She climbed up and sat on the bed, then opened the lid of the food placed on the bed. In an instant, a big steak appeared in front of her. Wow! Looking at the steaming steak, Prawalton couldn't help but shout excitedly. Then she reached out her hand to grab it. Today's Prawalton seemed to have returned to more than 10 years ago, when she was still a child. She was completely different from the iceberg and the strength when she first saw Zhang Hai. She only had a trace of childishness. However, Zhang Hai wouldn't let her grab it everywhere. After slapping her little hand, he put the food in front of the prepared table. What Zhang Hai ordered was a pure Western food. 2 steaks, 1 pasta, 1 lasagna, 1 baked lobster with cheese, plus a bowl of beef, turnip, and potato soup. Well, super soup. Finally, there was a basket of bread and butter. Although there wasn't much, it was still very satisfying. Zhang Hai and Prawalton sat across the table. The two didn't eat anything since last night, so they were naturally hungry now. They began to eat quickly, but compared to Zhang Hai, Prawalton's appetite was much smaller. She only had the steak and some pasta. She was already full without even eating the bread. However, the rest of Zhang Hai's food naturally couldn't run away. But just as Zhang Hai was eating happily, his body couldn't help but tremble, because at this time, he felt a pair of small feet, unknowingly, came to his groin. Feeling this scene, Zhang Hai couldn't help but look at Prawalton in front of him. When Prawalton saw Zhang Hai looking at her, she just sat there and smiled foolishly. Looking down, the pair of small white feet, after feeling Zhang Hai's change, began to imitate his hand and began to move. This was the first time Zhang Hai felt this kind of feeling. He had to admit, it was a bit interesting. Eat, don't make trouble. He patted Prawalton's calf. Well, it was more of a touch than a pat. You eat your food. I'll play mine. This is my baby. My favorite thing in the world. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Prawalton raised her head proudly, continued to move her feet, and said with a smile, You're digging your own grave. At this time, after Zhang Hai ate a few more mouthfuls, he couldn't eat any more. He couldn't help but shake his head, then stood up, and pounced on Prawalton amidst her charming laughter. Just as Zhang Hai's Prawalton was shamelessly there, the executives of Walmart were holding a high-level meeting. The founder of Walmart was Sam Walton. Although it was a listed company, most of the shares belonged to Sam Walton. After Sam Walton's death, his shares were handed over to his children. Although it seemed that Roberson Walton had the most shares, it was not by much. That was why Jim Walton could easily threaten his position. As long as he roped in a few people, he could easily surpass his brother's shares. As for the other brothers and sisters, they all remained neutral. They only needed to divide the money. However, although the people in the meeting at this time were at least worth tens of billions of dollars, the location of the meeting was very simple. It was a very small conference room, which was also a tradition of the Walton family. Prawalton liked to show off because of her mother, but the Walton family was famous for being stingy. When Sam Walton was still alive, he was very stingy. He was a billionaire, but he had never bought a mansion. He had always lived in Pentonville, and often drove his old pickup truck in and out of town. Everyone in town knew that he was very stingy. Every time he got a haircut, he only spent $5, which was the lowest price in town. However, this old man donated hundreds of millions of dollars to 5 universities in the United States, and set up many scholarship schools all over the country. His sons also inherited his tradition. In the largest group in the United States, when Jim Walton was the president, his office was only 20 square meters. This was because he was the youngest son, so he was more arrogant. As the chairman, Roberson Walton's office was only 12 square meters, and the office facilities were very old. If they weren't broken, they would never be replaced. Therefore, in the circle of rich people in the United States, some people jealously said that Walmart was a place where the poor opened and the poor bought. However, these people were just jealous. The world's largest retail giant was not as simple as it seemed. Their stores were really all over the world. However, they were really stingy. The people in this room together had a net worth of more than hundreds of billions of dollars, but they asked for the smallest conference room. It was even a little crowded with these people sitting here. Big brother, don't you want to talk about what we should do now? But no matter what the conference room was like, they were used to it. They were here to talk business. Sitting at the bottom, Jim Walton looked at Roberson Walton and said with a smile, "I want to hear your opinions." Hearing Jim Walton's words, Roberson also said with a calm face, "You can't promise him, absolutely not. We can't be controlled by a child." As soon as Roberson Walton's voice fell, Dong Mingluan stood up with red eyes and shouted loudly. He didn't sleep last night, and he couldn't sleep. As soon as he closed his eyes, he seemed to see Pro Walton and Jiang Hai having sex. But it was true that the two of them were having sex. But not knowing and knowing were really different. Now, he had to compromise with Jiang Hai. As long as he was still a man, he would never do it. But if you don't promise him, can you get his beef? At this time, an old woman sitting next to him said softly. This woman was called Alice Walton, Sam Walton's eldest daughter. She used to be the second richest person in the world, but in the Walton family, she was a woman after all, so she didn't manage the company's operations. All she wanted was money. Hearing Alice Walton's words, Dong Mingluan couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. This sentence was cutting the ground from under the pot. Just like what Alice Walton said, he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to get Jiang Hai's beef. He couldn't afford to gamble. If Pro Walton's position was really removed, Jiang Hai really wouldn't supply. Who would they go to? They couldn't lose this supplier. Although it wasn't a matter of life and death, it was far from being comparable to a change. Sister-in-law, what do you think? Looking at Dong Mingluan's red face, Jim Walton couldn't help but smile and said to a fat white woman next to him. This woman was called Christy Walton, but she was actually not a member of the Walton family. Her husband was called John Walton, the second son of Sam Walton. But he passed away and left the family property to her. According to this year's Forbes list, her net worth was $20 billion. In fact, she was the richest among the people here, but she knew when to advance and when to retreat. She knew what she could say and what she couldn't say. When she heard Sam Walton's words, she just smiled and said that she had no opinion. Jim, Big Sister and the others won't have anything to say. What do you think? After asking a group of people, except for Dong Mingluan, who strongly expressed that he wanted to fight Jiang Hai to the death, the others remained neutral. They just wanted to see how the two brothers would deal with it. Roberson Walton glanced at Jim Walton opposite him. In fact, the only people who really spoke were them. I mean, we can't lose this supplier. Let Pro Walton be the president. But brother, after this, do you still dare to use her? Jim Walton knocked on the table and said with a smile. You don't have to worry about this. Hearing Jim Walton's words, Roberson also didn't show his emotions, just said lightly. At this time, Jiang Hai and the others didn't know that when they were happy, the Walmart executives here had already made a decision. The two didn't leave the room today. They had to admit that the fighting power of American women was indeed strong, extremely strong. She also fought with Jiang Hai for a day. Although it was because of the aura, she was still not completely suppressed by Jiang Hai. Sometimes she would even resist, but when she resisted, she was suppressed faster. It wasn't until the evening that Pro Walton received a call from Elizabeth Rowland, telling her that the head office had made a new decision. Next year, she would continue to worry about the president of Sam's Club. After receiving the news, Walton couldn't help but excitedly hug Zhang Hai again. She had to admit that Zhang Hai really did her a big favor this time. A very big favor. After the news was released, many people knew the news for the first time. The people who attended last night's party also talked about what happened last night in some high-level circles. However, in their words, the main character was not the Walton family's internal strife, but Zhang Hai. This young Huaxia man had the ability to turn an ordinary beef into a superior-grade beef. He was not an ordinary person, as he could force the Walton family to compromise. This guy could not be said to be unimportant, but people were more concerned about his beef. They were 100% sure that there was a secret recipe. But what is the secret recipe? They don't know, but they are very interested to find out. After confirming that she was fine, Walton and Zhang Hai stayed in New York for a day, then returned to her home in Atlantic City. In recent days, not only was she worried, but even the staff of Sam's Club didn't have a good time. She had to go back to comfort them, which was the most important thing. Zhang Hai didn't go back with her, but returned to his manor. In the past 2 days and 3 nights, Zhang Hai didn't leave his suite, so it was needless to say what he was doing inside. When Walton recovered, she would come to Zhang Hai to do that kind of unspeakable thing. Fortunately, Zhang Hai's body was good, and he had spiritual energy. Otherwise, with this kind of intensity, either he or Walton would die. After all, a person's energy was limited, and they were playing too much. When Zhang Hai returned to the manor, Cheryl Lee also got the exact news, but she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, she wanted to thank Zhang Hai in person. Originally, she was going to use her body to repay Zhang Hai, but recently, Zhang Hai didn't have any desire. He shouldn't want to touch a woman for at least 3 days. Seeing that Zhang Hai didn't have the urge to be with her, Cheryl Lee was actually very moved. It seems that Zhang Hai didn't really help because of that kind of thing. He had some respect for her and Walton. This made Cheryl feel that Zhang Hai was actually a good person. It's just that he had too many women. After staying here for 3 days, even if she was stupid, she could see that, not to mention Aphrodite and the others, the 5 women in Zhang Hai's villa were actually interested in Zhang Hai. If Zhang Hai was willing, they would go and do something with Zhang Hai. Perhaps only a fool like Zhang Hai couldn't see it. After having a deep kiss with Zhang Hai, Cheryl Lee drove her sports car and left Zhang Hai's manor. She wanted to rush back to Atlantic City. She hadn't seen Walton for a while. Since Zhang Hai wasn't going to let her stay here for the night, she had to find her real other half. Although this was a bit awkward, it was the truth. Zhang Hai and Walton should be rivals in love. However, the 2 parties might not think so. At this time, apart from those women, a man walked into Walton's heart for the first time. And Zhang Hai's heart, which was already full, also walked into Walton. No one knew what would happen between the 2 of them. In fact, even Zhang Hai didn't know if there was a female lead in this book, or who the female lead was. Unknowingly, more than a year had passed, and the female lead still hadn't been decided. It was very tragic. Chapter 639. Ha! Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Zhang Hai walked down the stairs step by step. In advertising terms, it was as if his whole body was hollowed out. He walked to the first floor and lay on the sofa, unwilling to move. Looking at his decadent appearance, Bernice, who was sitting next to him drinking milk and eating oatmeal, couldn't help but look at him seriously. "What did you do in New York these few days? Why are you so decadent?" In fact, since coming back last night, Bernice found that Zhang Hai was a little decadent. She originally thought that Zhang Hai was tired. After all, he had driven for several hours. But looking at Zhang Hai's current appearance, logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. Although she hadn't personally experienced Zhang Hai's physical fitness, she more or less had some understanding. Zhang Hai should have recovered after a nap, so why was he still so dispirited? Cough. These days, I was mainly talking to the Walton family about the deal. Because I was a little tired, I didn't sleep much. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai's eyes flashed for a moment, but he quickly looked at Bernice and said in a serious tone. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice frowned. Her sixth sense told her that Zhang Hai was talking nonsense. What kind of person was Zhang Hai? She had been watching him for several months. This guy was usually so lazy that it made people's hair stand on end. And it could be seen that Zhang Hai's IQ wasn't too high. He was too lazy to think about things like copywriting, tricks and so on. He just liked to win with his strength. How could you force such a person to talk to the Walton family? Regardless of whether others believed it or not, she wouldn't believe it anyway. Her eyes clearly said that she didn't believe it. However, Zhang Hai chose to ignore her gaze. He couldn't say that he had been rolling in bed in a hotel for 3 days. In fact, it proved that with Zhang Hai's aura, there was no land that was plowed to waste, only cows that were exhausted to death. Well, you have to take care of your body when you're working. There's a big family waiting for you to eat. In the end, after hesitating for a long time, Bernice chose to believe Zhang Hai. She sat there, put her 2 long legs on the coffee table, and leaned against it to eat. Looking at Bernice's long legs, Zhang Hai subconsciously thought of Walton. Fortunately, he quickly suppressed this thought. He took a deep breath and muttered, "If my heart is as clear as ice, I won't be alarmed even if the sky collapses." He finally suppressed the evil fire, but he didn't dare to sit here. Instead, he went directly to the kitchen and ate some food. After eating some food, Zhang Hai felt a lot more comfortable. After stretching for a bit, he went to the stable to take a look. He had not seen little Xia for many days. He wanted to see this little, big horse. He went to feed it some carrots, and then strolled around, feeling the cold wind blowing on his face. Zhang Hai was also a lot more energetic. He stretched his sore waist, and Zhang Hai raised his head. At this time, the color of the sky above his manor was not very good. Although there were no dark clouds, there was a thin layer of clouds blocking the sky, making it look gray. In Winthrop in November, the weather was very cold and the wind was not small. He didn't know when the next snow would come, but it shouldn't make Zhang Hai wait too long. After walking around outside, Zhang Hai returned to the manor for lunch. It was obvious that Zhang Hai was home, and Xiaoya was also very happy. She made a lot of delicious food. She also made soup dumplings that Zhang Hai wanted to eat the day before he left. After eating a delicious lunch, Zhang Hai said, after lunch, Zhang Hai went back to his room to sleep, which was rare. He had indeed been lacking sleep these days. Zhang Hai slept until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before he woke up. However, he didn't wake up because he had woken up, but because his phone had woken him up. He glanced at the name on the phone. It turned out to be Selena Gomez, which surprised Zhang Hai a little. Selena? Why is she looking for me? Since the last time he took Selena Gomez out to play, Zhang Hai and her had less contact. Although basically every 2 or 3 days, they would text and video call each other. In front of Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez was very casual. Almost every video call was when she had just taken a shower and was not wearing clothes. She would video call Zhang Hai just like that. It was obvious that she trusted Zhang Hai a lot. Otherwise, if these scenes were recorded and posted on the internet, it would cause a storm. Of course, Zhang Hai would not do that. Therefore, Zhang Hai knew about her recent situation. A few days ago, when New York started to become cold, she returned to Los Angeles. She should still be in Los Angeles now. Why was she calling him at this time? However, although he was curious, Zhang Hai still picked up the phone and asked her directly, "Hello, Selena, are you looking for me?" "Hello, Zhang. Where are you?" Listening to Zhang Hai's voice, Selena Gomez's side was a little chaotic. Selena's voice was almost shouting, which made Zhang Hai a little confused. What the hell is this? I'm at home, taking a nap. Rubbing his eyes, Zhang Hai said to Selena Gomez. What nap? Come, get up, come to New York, I'll take you out to play. Hearing that Zhang Hai was sleeping, Selena Gomez couldn't help but spit. She knew Zhang Hai. This guy never slept during the day. He must be teasing her. Play what? Sister, I just came back from New York yesterday. Hearing that he was going to New York again, Zhang Hai's forehead had 3 black lines, and then he said helplessly. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez on the other side was also speechless. Are you coming or not? I'm introducing you to a beauty, are you not happy? Facing Zhang Hai on the other side of the phone, Selena Gomez said with some anger. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai sighed. He really couldn't move. However, considering that if he didn't go, there would be some estrangement with Selena Gomez in the future, Zhang Hai nodded and said that he would go in a while. After receiving the news that Zhang Hai would come, Selena Gomez also smiled. After staying in bed for a while, Zhang Hai forced his body, which had not recovered, to get out of bed. He put on the set of clothes he was familiar with and went downstairs. Seeing Zhang Hai coming down in clothes, the girls who were downstairs couldn't help but be stunned, and their faces were not very good. "Are you going out again?" Looking at Zhang Hai, Bernice said with some dissatisfaction. "Well, I'm going to New York again. There are still some things that haven't been settled last time, so I have to go again." With a weak voice, Zhang Hai slowly walked to the door, but his eyes kept dodging. Zhang Hai also knew that he was not born to lie, so not letting them see his eyes was also one of his disguises. "Oh, when will you come back?" Hearing that Zhang Hai was going back because of the last incident, although she was a little reluctant, Bernice and the others would not stop him, but Bernice still said seriously. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai frowned. "I don't know, but I may come back tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. I shouldn't be gone for too long." After thinking about it, Zhang Hai gave an uncertain time. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice and the others looked at each other. "Then go, be careful on the road, don't wait until Christmas to come back." Hearing their words, Zhang Hai also smiled awkwardly and walked out of the villa. Looking at his leisurely little home, he couldn't help but sigh. He hated being busy the most, but he didn't know why he was so busy recently. It shouldn't be. After getting in the car, Zhang Hai stepped on the accelerator, and the car went to New York City. When he left, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When he arrived, it was almost 7 o'clock. After entering New York, Zhang Hai called Selena Gomez. Originally, he thought that Selena Gomez called him to spend time with him, but he didn't expect that she actually gave him a KTV seat, which made Zhang Hai a little speechless. It seemed that she did say on the phone that she wanted to introduce a beauty to him. Originally, Zhang Hai thought that she was joking. But now it seemed that it was not as simple as a joke. In order to prevent drinking later, Zhang Hai deliberately bought 2 sandwiches and a set of pancakes on the street before he went. After eating first, he went to the place. When he arrived, it was already around 8 o'clock in the evening. This KTV, in fact, was not an exaggeration to call it a nightclub. The first floor was indeed for dancing, but the second floor was a special box. In New York, there were many rich people and celebrities, so in order to protect the privacy of these people, many people opened such a place with excellent security, so that reporters couldn't enter. Here, if one wasn't a celebrity, then they needed someone to bring them in. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to enter, just like the place Zhang Hai went to last time. At that time, if it weren't for Moses Adams, Zhang Hai wouldn't have been able to get in. It was the same today. After parking the car, Zhang Hai walked into the nightclub. The first floor was naturally very noisy, and Zhang Hai was not interested. He took the elevator to the second floor, but just as he got out of the elevator, he was stopped by 2 big men. "Sir, I'm sorry. Please show me your membership card." Hearing the 2 big men, Zhang Hai could not help but be stunned. "How can I have a membership card here?" But fortunately, his reaction was not slow. He immediately remembered to call Selena Gomez. The phone was connected after 2 rings. After explaining the situation, Selena Gomez rushed over in less than a minute. Looking at Selena Gomez in front of him, Zhang Hai could not help but light up, and then his vision went dark. Because at this time, Selena Gomez did not come in casual clothes, but wore a black leather skirt. But what Zhang Hai cared about most was her cleavage. It was almost the same as not wearing it. The deep V-neck opened all the way to her belly button. Zhang Hai is a traditional Xia person, and his possessiveness is very strong. Although he knows that he can't make Selena Gomez follow him wholeheartedly, after all, his surname is Zhang, not Long, and not Outyen. But when he saw this situation, he was still a little upset. He took off his coat and put it on Selena Gomez. And Selena Gomez, who was telling the 2 security guards that Zhang Hai was her friend, felt Zhang Hai's action. She couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then a sweet smile appeared on her face. She tightened her clothes, and regardless of whether Zhang Hai's clothes matched her, she smiled and pulled Zhang Hai's hand. She directly took Zhang Hai's arm and walked toward one of the rooms. "Have you missed me recently?" Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez said with a smile. "Have you missed me?" Looking at her, Zhang Hai touched his nose and then asked. Humph, I won't miss a big bad guy like you. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez wrinkled her nose and said cutely. Looking at her appearance, Zhang Hai also smiled, and then followed her into a room. When Zhang Hai walked in, he found that there were a lot of people in the room. Most of them were women, and they were all tall beauties. There were also a few men, and some of them were more familiar. Zhang Hai looked at the room with more than 20 people, and he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't like this kind of occasion very much. Come on, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Zhang Hai. He is a rich man, but let me tell you, don't have any ideas about him. These are all my friends, so I won't introduce them one by one. Seeing the door open, everyone in the room couldn't help but look over. When they saw that it was Zhang Hai, they couldn't help but be stunned, and Zhang Hai was also stunned. At this time, Selena Gomez jumped out and pulled Zhang Hai with a smug face and introduced him. When they heard Selena Gomez say that Zhang Hai was a rich man, everyone in the room couldn't help but shush. Obviously, these people didn't care too much about Selena Gomez's words, and Selena Gomez also pulled Zhang Hai into the room, came to the front of the bar, and sat there face to face with Zhang Hai. What's the situation? I thought you just asked me to come over to have fun. Glancing at the people in the room, Zhang Hai shrugged helplessly. He still didn't understand what the hell was going on. These people are some singers and actors. Oh, most of them are models. Look at those tall guys with long legs. They are all supermodels. I have a show tomorrow, and I'll give you some benefits. Let's broaden your horizons. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also laughed, and said with a smile while handing an invitation to Zhang Hai. Chapter 640. After receiving the invitation, Zhang Hai opened it in front of her. The invitation was a pink envelope with a golden pattern. There was something gilded on it that Zhang Hai didn't know. It was printed with a string of English words, Victoria's Secret. Scott of Victoria. Looking at the string of English words, Zhang Hai slowly read it out loud. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Then she clicked on the invitation. This is Victoria's Secret. Selena Gomez looked at Zhang Hai and said seriously. I know, a company that sells vests. No wonder you're dressed like this. Glancing at the thing, Zhang Hai put it back in the invitation. He had heard of this brand before. Well, he had only heard of it. Why would a man ask about the brand of women's vests when he had nothing to do? He's not a pervert. Although you're right, why do I feel that these words coming out of your mouth are so low class? But I like it, hee hee. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head proudly and then said with a smile. I was invited by them as this year's guest singer. I don't have to walk the runway, but I have to wear a little, cool. You know, those people don't come here to look at down jackets. Haha, what do you want to drink? I'll get it. Looking at Zhang Hai's helpless expression, Selena Gomez couldn't help but smile. Then she wisely changed the topic. Beer. I don't like to drink anything else. Zhang Hai shrugged and said helplessly. This is Selena Gomez's career. He has no right to interfere. This is also because his relationship with Selena Gomez is somewhat similar to Per Walton's. Something did happen between them, and their relationship is a bit vague, but Zhang Hai really has no right to interfere with the other party. If the other party was the female lead and dared to dress like this, Zhang Hai would scold her to death. Well, if she dressed like this in front of Zhang Hai, it would be pretty good, but the problem now is that it seems that Zhang Hai has a bigger problem. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and left here. She went to the side to get a beer, but less than 10 seconds after she left, a white woman walked over. This woman is indeed very beautiful. She has a fairy-like aura on her body, and she is also wearing, very cool clothes. After walking in front of Zhang Hai, she sat directly in front of Selena Gomez. Hi, hello. Seeing her sit down, Zhang Hai was somewhat embarrassed, but she first greeted Zhang Hai in advance. Hello. After responding, Zhang Hai began to look for Selena Gomez in the crowd. He was a little insecure. My name is Ally Golding, a good friend of Selena Gomez and one of the resident singers this time. I heard Selena Gomez mention you. Nice to meet you. Seeing Zhang Hai's slightly impolite behavior, the other party didn't care. Instead, she smiled and said to Zhang Hai. Then she reached out her hand. Zhang Hai also shook her hand, but Zhang Hai really didn't know who she was. "Oh, hello, I've heard your song. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." Although Zhang Hai didn't know who she was, she said that she was a resident singer, so she should be a singer, so Zhang Hai said with a little guilty conscience. "You've heard my song? Sing a song for me?" But after hearing Zhang Hai's words, the woman was very curious. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and ask Zhang Hai. This time, Zhang Hai was Spartan. How would he know who this woman was? In an instant, Zhang Hai felt that his embarrassment was about to recur. What the hell is this? This is too embarrassing. Okay, ally, I told you before, my boyfriend doesn't listen to our music. But just when Zhang Hai was at his most awkward, Selena Gomez walked over with a smile and half a bottle of beer in her hand. The beer here was the 330 milliliters, very small bottles, so 6 bottles together didn't look very big. She put down the beer and opened 3 bottles directly. Zhang Hai had one, she had one, and she handed one to the woman. I know, but he just said that he heard my song, so I'm also very curious. After taking the beer, Ally Golding also said with a smile. Okay, don't say that you don't know this is Eastern courtesy. Selena Gomez rolled her eyes and said with a helpless expression. Hey sisters, we're here. Just as Selena Gomez was talking, the door of the room suddenly opened again. Then, a beautiful woman with lips that looked like she had just eaten walked in with 2 young but very youthful and beautiful girls. When Selena Gomez saw the 3 of them, she couldn't help but frown. Did you call them? Seeing the 3 people who walked in, Selena Gomez's expression was a little unpleasant. Come on, that's just a rumor. You can't just disappear because of a scumbag. Seeing Selena Gomez's unpleasant face, Ally Golding said with some helplessness. Hearing her words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but be silent. But at this moment, the 3 people who came in also greeted everyone in the room and saw Zhang Hai and the other 2 sitting here. Well actually, they ignored Zhang Hai and only saw Selena Gomez and Ally Golding. Hey, Ally, Selena. We haven't hung out together for a while, right? The woman walked over and put one hand on Ally Golding's shoulder and the other hand on Selena Gomez's shoulder. Her words were somewhat apologetic to Selena Gomez. Hearing her taking the initiative to express goodwill, Selena Gomez didn't know how to respond. Hey Taylor, you're late. Come, let me introduce you. This is Zhang Hai, Selena's boyfriend. Zhang, this is Taylor Swift, a good friend of mine and Selena's. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Ally Golding couldn't help but speak with a smile. After hearing her words, Zhang Hai also stood up. Because he heard Selena's words and knew that she and Taylor didn't get along, Zhang Hai didn't show too much enthusiasm. He just smiled and nodded as a greeting. As for who this woman was, Zhang Hai could only say that he didn't care about the American entertainment industry. If you were talking about an NBA star, he probably knew, but if it was a Hollywood or Grammy-winning actress, Zhang Hai really didn't know. Zhang Hai? Soaring Dragon Manor? Taylor Swift looked at Zhang Hai, narrowed her eyes and asked softly. It's me. However, Zhang Hai didn't expect her to recognize him. It was a little surprising. Excuse me, Selena, I think we need to talk. Ellie, come too. Taylor Swift smiled apologetically at Zhang Hai. Taylor Swift forcefully pulled Selena and gave Ellie a look. Then the 3 women walked to a corner in the distance. As soon as they reached the corner, Taylor Swift's face became gloomy. Selena, are you crazy? That guy is your boyfriend? A few days ago, he was Walton's man. Taylor Swift pointed at Zhang Hai and said angrily. Hearing her words, Ally Golding couldn't help but be stunned. Wait a minute. Taylor, Walton? That person from the Walmart group? What does this have to do with her? Ellie Golding extended her hand and stopped Taylor Swift from continuing. Then she asked curiously, Don't worry about it. Ellie, this news has spread in the upper class, just a few days ago. Taylor Swift sighed as she looked at Ellie Golding, and then told her about what happened at the Hilton Hotel a few days ago. I know, in fact, I'm not his real girlfriend, we are just in that kind of relationship. But after hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez shrugged and said indifferently. After hearing her words, the two women were shocked. Oh my God, Selena, are you crazy? You are just one of that guy's lovers? Oh my God, I think that guy looks quite honest, but I didn't expect him to be such a person. Selena, you have to break up with him quickly. Ally Golding looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. She really didn't expect Zhang Hai to be such a person. Selena, Justin is a scumbag. I've never thought of using him to cause you any harm. If I did, I'll apologize to you now. But you can't do this. Your taste in men is really terrible. Taylor Swift looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. The relationship between them was originally very close, but then something bad happened because of Justin Bieber. Since then, the relationship between the two was a little awkward, although the two had nothing to do with Justin now. But after meeting Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez still hated Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift was 3 years older than her, after all, and she couldn't watch her sister be cheated by Zhang Hai. You don't understand the things between us. Zhang Hai is a good person, he won't hurt me. The initiative between us is actually mine, not his. He is like a poppy flower. Irresistible. Looking back at Zhang Hai, who was sitting there and studying the beer in front of him, Selena Gomez said with a smile. She knew that Zhang Hai was not a good person. Even Zhang Hai was definitely not a bad person. She liked to see Zhang Hai like this. This Zhang Hai was indeed very cute. Oh my God. He must have cast Eastern magic on you. But Selena Gomez looked as if she had eaten a heavy weight. Taylor Swift and Ally Golding could not help but look at each other. They could not let their little sister sink deeper and deeper. At this moment, they happened to see a woman who came with Taylor Swift walk in front of Zhang Hai. Seeing this scene, they could not help but smile because they were very familiar with that woman. With her around, it would not be a problem for Selena Gomez to see Zhang Hai's true nature. Since you trust that guy so much, I'll let you see if this guy can withstand the test. Taylor Swift turned Selena Gomez's shoulder and said in Selena Gomez's ear. Her eyes were also fixed on Zhang Hai and that woman. Hello, are you Zhang Hai? My name is Kendall Jenner. I heard that you have a manner? The woman walked in front of Zhang Hai with a smile. Without asking Zhang Hai if he agreed, she sat directly opposite Zhang Hai and said to Zhang Hai with a charming face. I do have a manner. Hearing the words of the woman in front of him, Zhang Hai temporarily stopped his thoughts of studying beer. He glanced at the woman and said somewhat woodenly. This woman looked very tall. Now that she was wearing high heels, she was at least 1.85 meters tall. Even if she was barefoot, she would be close to 1.8 meters. The clothes she was wearing were also very cool, although the temperature outside was almost 0. The most eye-catching thing was her exposed collarbone. It was really beautiful, but the Yuehun tribe below the collarbone was much smaller. Her face carried a mixture of charm and purity, but it was not attractive to Zhang Hai. Because the current Zhang Hai was almost drained dry by Perwalton, he was now in sage mode and would not be invaded by external things. In fact, if Zhang Hai thought about it carefully now, he might remember who this person was. Kendall Jenner was the half-sister of the American socialite, Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian was very famous in the United States because of some videotapes that could not be found in China. However, she was famous in China because one of her sisters was married to Lamar Odom, a player who had made great contributions during the Lakers' two-time championship. Therefore, Kim Kardashian's nickname in China was Big Sister-in-Law, and Kendall Jenner's nickname was Little Sister-in-Law or Little Sister Jean. However, this nickname was recently snatched away by her more capable sister. But this did not mean that Kendall Jenner's reputation was low, especially in the supermodel industry. She was 20 years old this year, but she was already a delicate supermodel. She was also one of the supermodels in this year's Victoria's Secret fashion show. What do you raise in your manner? Looking at Zhang Hai, Kendall Jenner was still very interested in Zhang Hai. Although her family was not a top family in the United States and was very rich, they were very well informed. It was impossible for her not to know that Zhang Hai was a young tycoon who was less than 30 years old and could earn more than $1 billion a year. Chapter 641. Oh, I just raised some cows and fish, Wang Yao said. Looking at the woman in front of him with a delicate face and a hint of seduction, Zhang Hai was obviously not very interested in her. Firstly, it was because of Prawalton, and secondly, it was because Selena Gomez was here. Of course, Zhang Hai himself was not particularly interested in these models. Is that so, okay? Listening to Zhang Hai's cold answer, Kendall Jenna, who was opposite him, could not help but feel a little embarrassed. She could see that Zhang Hai did not seem to be interested in her, so she looked at Gigi Hadina, who came with her in the distance, curled her lips, stood up, and left. At this time in the distance, watching Zhang Hai withstand the test, Taylor Swift and the others couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with this guy? Kendall is still very good. Could it be that he is not interested in women? Taylor Swift, whose face was very white, but her lips were quite red, couldn't help but frown and say with dissatisfaction. Okay, our matter. Let's leave it at that for today. I still have my man to accompany. Glancing at Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez couldn't help but frown. This guy, I really hate him more and more. After that, she ignored Taylor Swift and Ally Golding and walked straight to Zhang Hai's side. What should we do now? Looking at Selena Gomez's stubborn look, Ally Golding couldn't help but frown and say with a helpless face. She really didn't want to see Selena Gomez get hurt again. We must think of a way. Taylor Swift's eyes narrowed as she looked at Zhang Hai, who stood up over there. You're back. Why does this beer taste so weird? Ignoring Taylor Swift and Ally Golding, Zhang Hai could not help but grin when he saw Selena Gomez. He pointed at the beer in his hand. Oh, you're back. Why does this beer taste so weird? This is a beer produced in the Netherlands. It's called Desperado. It's very strong. It's mixed with tequila, so it tastes a little sweet when you drink it, but people who aren't used to it will feel weird when they drink it. Taylor Swift couldn't help but laugh when she heard Zhang Hai's words. Really? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai glanced at the English words printed on the bottle. He was indeed a little confused. Let's go, I'll take you to meet my friends. They are all beautiful women. Looking at Zhang Hai's appearance, Selena Gomez couldn't help laughing. Zhang Hai can be so cute sometimes. She patted Zhang Hai on the shoulder and took Zhang Hai to the people who were playing in the distance. Seeing Selena Gomez coming, these people also looked at her and Zhang Hai beside her. In the modeling circle, news is actually quite fast. They may not know who Zhang Hai is, but they have heard of this name. It's just that when Zhang Hai came, they didn't want to show too much, but now that Zhang Hai came, they also looked at him with a smile. Tomorrow, there will be a total of 42 models. 15 of them will be angels and 27 supermodels. However, many of them will not be here. For example, your compatriots, she and he. However, there are still quite a number of them. This is Sister Audria Lima. She is from Brazil. Looking at the eyes of these women, Selena Gomez didn't seem to notice at all and began to introduce. The first to be introduced was a Brazilian named Audria Lima. This woman was actually very famous in the modeling circle. In 2013, she had an annual income of $6 million and was the third most expensive model in the world. Why was she the first to be introduced? Because tomorrow's Victoria's Secret was almost her home ground. Born in 1981, she was the model who had signed with Victoria's Secret for the longest time. She also had the most experience here. At 1.78 meters tall, she didn't look like the South Americans that Zhang Hai knew of. Her figure was very tall, her skin was slightly bronze, but it wasn't very heavy. She also had a pair of slender legs that were rarely seen in South Americans. She also had a head of dark brown hair, which made her look really beautiful. After hearing Selena Gomez's introduction, she was the first to stand up and shake hands with Zhang Hai with a smile. But when she shook hands, she secretly used a little strength, which made Zhang Hai feel a little uncomfortable. He was not a casual person. So Zhang Hai quickly pulled his hand back and smiled politely at her. This is Alexander Ambrosio, also a Brazilian. After introducing Lima, Selena Gomez introduced a woman next to Lima. However, this woman was much more reserved. She only shook hands with Lima. After all, this woman was married. Well, Audria Lima was also married, but she got divorced last year. This woman had divorced a rich businessman, so it could be said that Alexander Ambrosio was not short of money and had no interest in Zhang Hai. He only shook her hand gently, smiled, and then let go. He didn't do anything else. This is Bahati Prinsloo, this is Candice Swanepoel, This is Trooper Aldridge, this is Elsa Hosk, this is Martha Hunter. Under Selena Gomez's guidance, Zhang Hai introduced them one by one. These women could be said to be good-looking. Maybe it was because the aesthetic standards of the East and the West were somewhat different. In Zhang Hai's eyes, they weren't stunning at all, but their figures were really good. Moreover, they were also very willing to show off their figures. At this time, although it was ice and snow outside, these women were wearing relatively cool clothes in this box. They did not mind. The men in the room swept their eyes over them. Selena Gomez knew that although Zhang Hai was not a pervert, his immunity to beautiful women was not very high. But tonight, Zhang Hai was a rare gentleman. He did not look at anyone, and the smile on his face was very calm. This made Selena Gomez very satisfied. After introducing a circle of people, Zhang Hai went to continue drinking, and Selena Gomez did not leave Zhang Hai's side again. It was not until 11 o'clock in the evening that everyone dismissed the party in the name of tomorrow's show. Zhang Hai also left with Selena Gomez. Of course, when leaving, Selena Gomez was still wearing Zhang Hai's very old-fashioned jacket. However, even if this jacket was old-fashioned, Selena Gomez did not care because it was given to her by Zhang Hai. After leaving the nightclub, Zhang Hai also took the car. This nightclub had a full-time driver to send Zhang Hai and the others to the place they wanted to go. Originally, Zhang Hai wanted to open a hotel to stay, but he did not expect Selena Gomez to directly ask the driver to drive to her home. After parking the car, Zhang Hai was also pulled into her villa by Selena Gomez. As soon as the door was closed, she directly pressed Zhang Hai against the door. Looking at Selena Gomez's face getting closer and closer, Zhang Hai also knew what she meant at this time. Holding her pretty face, Zhang Hai kissed the red lips in front of him. After a long kiss, Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez slowly separated. Looking at Zhang Hai in front of her, Selena Gomez could not help but smile. Your performance tonight is really good. It's not like the Zhang Hai I know. Seeing so many white upper body and legs, don't you feel anything? Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez said in Zhang Hai's ear. There is, but aren't you by my side? I know that as long as I can endure it, you will definitely reward me. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Zhang Hai also smiled, and then whispered to her. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez could not help but smile, then pulled Zhang Hai's clothes and walked into the next room. This night, there was no need to say too much. Although Zhang Hai was still in the semi-sage mode, he was more or less a young man. Without providing spiritual energy to Selena Gomez, it was not a problem for him to deal with her. After being busy until about 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, the two fell asleep in each other's arms. They slept until dawn, and didn't wake up until noon the next day. Then they went to have breakfast and lunch together, and then Selena Gomez went to the venue this time. Zhang Hai casually strolled around New York before going to the venue. Unlike those stars who walked the red carpet, Zhang Hai entered the venue early. Selena Gomez knew that Zhang Hai was not the kind of person who liked to be in the limelight. Although his seat was very close, he was not a star. After sitting here, he saw an unfamiliar star coming in. Sitting next to him was a black man. Zhang Hai did not know what his name was. After seeing Zhang Hai, he smiled and greeted him. Zhang Hai also greeted him, and then there was no sound. They just sat there quietly and waited to watch the show. Tonight, Taylor Swift also came. As a 5-time Grammy Award winner, Taylor Swift was obviously the focus of everyone no matter where she was. After signing her name outside, she also walked into the venue and went to her seat. However, from the corner of her eye, she happened to see Zhang Hai sitting in the distance, so her butt that had not yet sat down lifted up again. Then she walked to Zhang Hai's side and looked at the black man next to Zhang Hai. Hey Jay-Z, where's your wife? Your wife isn't here, so it's not very good for you to be here looking at this thing. Looking at the man beside Zhang Hai, Taylor Swift said with a playful face. Seeing her coming over, the man felt that something was wrong. When he heard her words, he couldn't help but look at her with an embarrassed face, then helplessly looked at her. I said that I asked for leave to watch it. I don't know if you would believe me or not. The black man shrugged and said with some uncertainty. You can think whatever you want, but now I need us to change our seats. My seat is over there. With a chuckle, Taylor Swift said to Jay-Z with a smile on her face. Hearing her words, Jay-Z couldn't help but sigh. It's not good to be targeted by this guy. Although she doesn't know who the man next to her is, she still has to pray for herself. After Jay-Z took Taylor's invitation, she gave her own, then went to her seat and sat down. As for Taylor Swift, she sat next to Jong Hai. But Jong Hai didn't react because he didn't know her. He only knew that she was Selena Gomez's friend. But the people sitting on the other side of her and the people behind her couldn't help but be excited. "Hey, you still remember me?" Sitting down and looking at Jong Hai sitting next to her, Taylor Swift said softly. "Oh, I remember, you are Selena's friend, but you don't seem to get along very well." Hearing her words, Jong Hai nodded and said. When she heard what Jong Hai said, Taylor Swift couldn't help but pout. This guy is really touching the pot that doesn't boil. "Listen, I know about you and Pro Walton, you scum. I won't let you be with Selena." Seeing Jong Hai ignoring her so calmly, Taylor Swift couldn't help but say with some annoyance. "This guy is too annoying." "Oh, really? Well, then you have to work harder." Originally, Jong Hai was still wondering why this woman seemed to have a grudge against him. Now that he thought about it, it might be because of Selena Gomez. However, if she wanted to stop Selena Gomez from being with him, then let her try. But then again, the relationship between Jong Hai and Selena Gomez didn't seem to be what she thought. "You." Hearing Jong Hai's powerful counterattack, Taylor Swift couldn't help but glare. But considering that she was a public figure, she didn't say anything too extreme. Instead, she sat down again, but her eyes stared fiercely at Jong Hai. "Let's watch the show. The show has started. If you stare at me again, I won't lose a piece of meat." Feeling the hostility around him, Jong Hai touched his nose and smiled, then put his eyes completely on the show in front of him. He didn't come here to be angry. Maybe she heard Jong Hai's words, but it was most likely not because she knew that this show would be recorded and broadcast on TV. So Taylor Swift forcibly suppressed her anger, then sat there and looked at the empty stage. But at this moment, suddenly, a light flashed, outlining the image of the stage. A blue light flashed on the big screen, then it turned red, then into sparks, and finally with a flash of golden light, the first model appeared. Chapter 642. As the music started and the lights turned on, a pair of golden wings appeared in Jong Hai's sight. When the model turned around, Jong Hai couldn't help but exclaim, not because the model had a good figure or a beautiful face, but mainly because of the golden armor. It really blinded Jong Hai's eyes. After she finished, the second model appeared. She was wearing normal clothes inside, but she had a pair of golden wings on the outside. The third golden wing opened directly, and the ones behind were basically all golden helmets and golden armors. Not long after, the legendary Xueqi supermodel he also appeared. She had 2 golden bubbles on her shoulders. She was really a nouveau riche. Excuse me, what does this Victoria's Secret sell? Looking at the beautiful women flashing on the stage, and the screams coming from the audience, Jong Hai looked at Taylor Swift, who was also cheering beside him, with some confusion. "Do you still need to ask? They sell vests." Hearing Jong Hai's words, Taylor Swift's eyes did not leave the stage, and she casually replied to Jong Hai. Hearing her words, Jong Hai couldn't help but scratch his head. If they sell vests, what the hell is this? Will anyone buy these vests? Each of them is wearing a golden holy garment. To be honest, looking at these golden helmets and golden armors, the first thing that came to Jong Hai's mind was the legendary golden holy Saga. When the armor was put on, it was indeed very intimidating. At least, it made Jong Hai choke with fright. It made Jong Hai have the illusion that they could tear the sky with a punch and crush the earth with a stomp. What the hell are these? What is a golden holy garment? Hearing Jong Hai's words, Taylor Swift couldn't help but look at him with some doubts. She was born in the United States and didn't know what a golden holy garment was. Japanese animation was quite popular in the United States, but the most popular was Dragon Ball. Except for the Dragon Balls, the others were really a lot worse. If they had to be ranked, then the second category should be the mecha category. Because the United States was established very late, anime was a good choice to cultivate the self-confidence of the human race. Therefore, in order to cultivate the self-confidence of their own people, the comics that the Americans created were all a bit, bullshit. Judging from the lousy nature of Marvel and DC. If there wasn't a cosmic war, it really wouldn't be able to attract these Americans. Just like One Piece, Naruto and so on, they just fought back and forth on Earth, but they couldn't destroy the dimension. Not to mention the dimension, even Earth hadn't been destroyed before. Indeed, the scale was much smaller. Dragon Balls were different. Although they couldn't destroy a plane, at least planets and the like could easily explode. Therefore, for the Americans, sometimes if you tell them about Dragon Balls, they might know about it. But if you told them about other cartoons, they would be a little confused. For example, the Golden Saints that Zhang Hai was talking about. You should know about Greek mythology. Hearing Taylor Swift's unique voice, Zhang Hai also told her, I know this. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Taylor Swift nodded. Although Westerners don't know about Saint Seiya, they still know a lot about Greek mythology. After all, in the Western world, many mythological systems came from Greece. For example, in the famous DC and Marvel, there are gods in both worlds, but because DC took the lead, the gods in DC are the gods in Greek mythology. For example, the famous Flash, his power of lightning was given by Hermes. Marvel is a Norse god, so although the Americans believe in God, they are very clear about the Greek gods. It's good to know this, because although it is the age of science and technology, the struggle between the Greek gods has never disappeared. Looking at Taylor Swift, Zhang Hai said with a serious face, just like Percy Jackson? Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask curiously when she heard Zhang Hai's words. The Percy Jackson she talked about is a movie series. The male protagonist is one of the Greek triumvirate, the half-human child of Poseidon, the god of the sea. Then, with this as the starting point, she began to write a story. She had to admit that the story was not very good, but the box office was not low. Listen to me first. Don't interrupt. These Greek gods have been preparing to take over the earth, but they can't be discovered by modern technology, so they need to find some representatives in the human world to get their power. The warriors found by Zeus are called God's warriors, the warriors found by Poseidon are called sea warriors, the warriors found by Hera are called underworld warriors, but among them, the strongest is the warrior found by Athena, the Saint Seiya. Looking at Taylor Swift, Zhang Hai talked nonsense seriously. But listening to Zhang Hai's words, which were obviously deceiving the ghost, Taylor Swift felt somewhat inexplicable. Regardless of what Taylor Swift thought, Zhang Hai continued to watch the show while talking nonsense seriously. Saint Seiya is divided into 3 levels, gold, silver, and bronze. Gold represents the 12 zodiac constellations. Silver represents the 24 zodiac constellations closest to the zodiac constellations, and bronze represents the other constellations. There are a total of 12 gold saints, 24 silver saints, and 52 bronze saints. Correspondingly, there is also their saint robe, but the saint robe is not made of gold, silver, or bronze, but made of divine iron. Now, these people are wearing shiny gold, similar to the gold saint robe of the gold saints. Don't lie to me. How do you know these things? You must have made it up to deceive me. This is just a series. This year, there are a total of 6 series to be shown. Psychedelic, Ice Angel, Angel Portrait, Fireworks, Pink, and Exotic Butterfly. What does this have to do with the gold saints you are talking about? Looking at Zhang Hai in front of her, Taylor Swift looked at Zhang Hai in disbelief. She wouldn't believe this guy's nonsense. She probably wouldn't believe it. That's why I said it's just like. As for why I know, if you have checked my background, you should know that I was nothing before last year. I suddenly had such a big manor and so much property. In fact, the main reason is, I am a Saint Seiya. In the end, I am still the lowest level. When I become stronger, my fists will tear the sky and my feet will crush the earth. After listening to Taylor Swift's words, Zhang Hai also began to talk nonsense. In fact, he didn't even remember what he said. Although the appearance of these supermodels was, to be honest, not too exquisite, especially for Asians, their figures were really incurable. They were all more than 1.75 meters tall. The places that should be fat were fat, and the places that should be thin were thin. When they walked, some places were constantly trembling. 2 straight long legs, plus a waist without a trace of fat. Cough, Zhang Hai was admiring, not having any evil thoughts. As for what he said to Taylor Swift, he didn't care. Even if she told this story, no one would believe it. Impossible, you must be bluffing. After listening to Zhang Hai's words, Taylor Swift was not stupid. She turned her head and looked at Zhang Hai with contempt. His fists could tear the sky and his feet could crush the earth? Why didn't he say that he was Superman? Look, you still don't believe me? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also looked at her before the series ended and the next series began. Then, he looked left and right and quietly looked at his chair. The chair they were sitting on was not a very good chair. It was similar to the chairs in the cinema, but the quality was better. Some parts were wrapped in iron, especially the joints. Zhang Hai looked at this piece of iron and happened to find a steel pipe that was not very thick. However, even if it was not very thick, it was still steel after all. It could withstand the force of 500 kilograms. According to the strength of a normal person, 500 kilograms? The impact force of a fist when swinging was almost 500 kilograms. This was said to be professionally trained, a heavyweight boxing champion. However, Zhang Hai's physical fitness was 4 times the limit of a human. Was that a joke? Although Saint Seiya was joking, he was ready to let this girl see his difference, so that she would not think of ways to say bad things about him in front of Selena Gomez every day. Thinking of this, Zhang Hai took the steel pipe and pulled it hard. Only a crisp sound was heard. Taylor Swift saw Zhang Hai pull the steel pipe off. This scared her all of a sudden because she saw that the steel pipe was not thin. Looking at the way Zhang Hai held the steel pipe, she looked at him with some doubts. Is what he said true? There are some things in this world that science can't explain. Holding the steel pipe in front of Taylor Swift, Zhang Hai shrugged and said to her. Then, in front of her, he gently pinched the steel pipe with the thumb and index finger of his right hand. The steel pipe that looked really strong was actually squashed by Zhang Hai. Seeing this scene, Taylor Swift was even more confused in an instant. Originally, in her opinion, Zhang Hai's words were nonsense, but inexplicably, they became more credible. Shoo, I saw that you are Selena Gomez's friend, so I told you. Don't tell anyone else. Looking at her, Zhang Hai wanted to throw the steel pipe away, but after thinking about it, if it was picked up by others, it would be troublesome. He was just scaring Taylor Swift and didn't really want others to know that he was different from normal people. So after thinking about it, Zhang Hai broke the steel pipe from the middle again. Zhang Hai put the part with his own fingerprints inside his clothes. He didn't throw the rest away, but directly stuffed it into Taylor Swift's hands, even though her face was still covered in Meng 13's mask. Looking at her appearance, Zhang Hai couldn't help but smile. Did she really think that Zhang Hai didn't hear her bad-mouthing him last night? Not long after, Selena Gomez walked to the front of the stage wearing the clothes she wore last night. Zhang Hai looked very eye-catching in the big V clothes, and began to sing. At first it was the dance group that came out and later it was the dress supermodels that came out. He had to admit that Selena Gomez, who claimed to be at least 1.75 meters tall and wore 10-centimeter high heels, was barely enough to catch Selena Gomez's eye. Even though she was much more famous than these supermodels, even though the soles of her shoes were as thick as Selena Gomez's height was only about 1.6 meters tall, and she was almost out of Selena Gomez's sight. The performance of the show was still very fast, especially in the case of watching it. Zhang Hai initially thought that coming to watch the show would be very boring. But unexpectedly, watching beautiful women change clothes was actually quite interesting. While Zhang Hai was still a little reluctant, the show ended. The ordinary audience left first, and the rich and famous people naturally walked through the special passage. Zhang Hai wasn't a famous person, but he was a rich person, so he was also arranged to walk through the special passage. Just outside the special passage, he saw that Selena Gomez had been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as she saw him coming, she immediately rushed over and gave Zhang Hai a big hug. Was my performance good today? Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez was like a little friend asking for praise. Good, of course it was good. Although Zhang Hai just saw that Selena Gomez was a little petite among a group of big models, he couldn't say such things now. No matter how low his EQ was, he knew that some things couldn't be said, so when he heard Selena Gomez's question, he gave her 2 thumbs up and said seriously. Hearing what Zhang Hai said, Selena Gomez also laughed. Selena, you and him. Cough, forget it, you have to pay attention to your safety. Watching Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez chatting there, Taylor Swift, who came out with Zhang Hai, couldn't help but take a step forward, but just as she said a sentence, she saw Zhang Hai glance at her. Thinking of the half-steel pipe still in her clothes, She temporarily took back her words and could only say pay attention to your safety. Pay attention to your safety? Oh, it seems that we really didn't pay attention to it. Let's go buy a t-shirt later. Hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez blinked. She didn't know Taylor Swift's original meaning, and she successfully misunderstood. Between a man and a woman when doing that, it's also called pay attention to your safety. I don't like that thing. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Zhang Hai shook his head and expressed his preference. Then I'll go buy medicine. Hearing that Zhang Hai didn't like it, Selena Gomez thought for a moment and said to Zhang Hai, eating that thing is not good for your health. Hey, don't think so much about these things. If you really have it, just give birth to it. It's not like I can't afford to raise it. I like children very much. Looking at Selena Gomez, Zhang Hai said with a smile. Who wants to give birth to a child for you? Annoying. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez's bronze skin couldn't help but blush, and then she hit Zhang Hai shyly. However, her hit made Zhang Hai even happier. He hugged her and left with a smile. Taylor Swift looked at the two of them and licked her lips. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. She really wanted to tell Selena Gomez that the man beside her was definitely not a good person. But considering his threatening action just now, Taylor Swift swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Her woman's sixth sense and common sense told her that what Zhang Hai just said to her was all nonsense. It was all fake. He was lying to her. But the half-steel pipe in her arms showed that what Zhang Hai said might not be all fake, but who knows how much was fake. Taylor, what are you standing here for? Are you waiting for me? At this moment, Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez's good friend, Ellie Goulding, ran over from behind and patted Taylor Swift with a smile. Phew. Ellie, you scared me to death. By the way, Ellie, do you know Saint Seiya? Looking at Ellie Goulding in front of her, Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask strangely. In her opinion, Ellie might know what the hell this was. At this time, Zhang Hai didn't know that Taylor Swift was scared half to death by him. After he left with Selena Gomez, he went straight back to Selena Gomez's home. There was no need to say much about what he would do when he got home. After eating some simple supper, the two of them did what they needed to do. It was all unspeakable content. The two of them didn't leave home until noon the next day, but this time, they were leaving. Selena Gomez was going back to Los Angeles. Don't forget, she was an actress and also a singer. She also had to work. She wasn't ready to spend the rest of her life with Zhang Hai. Since she was leaving, Zhang Hai would follow. He didn't know anyone in New York, so he naturally had to go home. Of course, when he got home, he would inevitably be looked down upon. In order to make himself less awkward, Zhang Hai decided to bring some gifts back when he went back. But it turned out that if he didn't bring gifts, he might just be looked down upon. After bringing gifts, it was actually, haha, because his gift, speaking of which, was a little, easy for people to misunderstand. You're tuning into the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.